Recording in progress. Good evening and welcome to the City of Milton Board of Zoning Appeals, August 16th training session. Please join me, or let me see, we're doing. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. Join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to start with the introduction of our members, starting to my left.
I'm Laura Bentley, District 2. I live on Bethany Church Road, sorry. I'll do it.
Adam Danella.
Hodge Patel.
Don Kurtz.
Barry Cohen.
David Jackson.
And Zach is not with us this evening. So we'll begin the training session. I will turn it over to the City Attorney, Paul, to begin his presentation.
Thank you. Members of the board, I am going to provide a general overview of hopefully most of the general questions that might come up as to your role and the conduct of meetings and how you accomplish the tasks that are set before the Board of Zoning Appeals. At the end of it, if we have a little time left, I've got some extra slides on ethics. Get to those if we get to them. A lot of times in the hour that we've got with the questions, and please feel free to ask questions along the way. I've tried to provide generalities, but there may be specifics that you think of, and I'm happy to answer any questions that come to your mind, either now or if you think of them afterwards later on. First is, are there actual rules that this board follows? Yes, the charter section 4.11H has some basic rules that allow you to establish additional rules. Those, hello. There we go. Then there are additional rules which set up the types of things that the board can hear and various much more broad general rules for you. But you also have the bylaws. I haven't spelled them out. I believe, did you circulate?
Yes, actually, I just sent to
I
chair. I can send it to everyone.
You should certainly have a copy of that. Will have, and I've got the meeting, how a meeting is run. They're set in the bylaws, and I have a slide on that in here. But the bylaws set out, what happens with voting, what happens when for variance hearings, what happens for secondary variance, which are basically appeals, administrative appeals, and all that is set out in the bylaws. I'm gonna cover a little bit of it, but the details you can go back to the bylaws. And if you need a copy, either myself or staff can get you an electronic copy or hard copies if you need them. This is from the city statute, which sets out what this board is tasked to do. Hear and decide requests for relief from provisions of the city zoning ordinance and consider appeals of decisions and interpretations made by the community development director. Primary variances, that's the most typical thing that you hear. That is, setback says you have to have 20 feet. Someone wants to build something within 15 feet of the side or rear or front set property line. That's what a primary variance is. That's 95% of what you're going to hear. You have something that they refer to as secondary variances. That's what a lot of jurisdictions will call administrative appeals. And that is when the community development director will either issue or not issue a permit, and somebody, whether it's the property owner or a neighbor, disagrees with the decision that shouldn't have been issued, whether it's statutorily prohibited or statutorily required, or they exercise discretion in a manner that the person appealing feels was inconsistent with the code. Yep.
So a primary variance, is that a variance from a law or rule that the city has already put in place and denied?
No.
And then is it considered an appeal, or is it?
A variance takes a situation in which the language of the code itself would prohibit what a property owner wants to do. They come and say, under the 4 criteria that are set out in the code, and we'll show those later on here, but using those criteria, I shouldn't have to comply with this for my particular situation. And it's to say, the nature of a variance is the city's code zoning ordinance has to cover all the situations throughout the entire city. So it's going to speak in more general kind of considerations. It can't look at every single instance and say, if there is a property that's less than 30 feet wide at the widest point and there's a stream running through it, then the setback is going to be limited to only 5 feet instead of the normal 30 feet. What has to happen is if somebody has that unusual situation that the general zoning ordinance didn't account for, they'll come in and say, hey, I've got a particular situation based on the size, shape, and topography of my property. It's not going to hurt my neighbors, and it's still consistent with the city's overall zoning plans. Then I would like to get relief from that specific strict application of the code in my one particular case. That's a primary variance. Secondary variance, as I said, is more of it's an appeal of a decision made by the community development director, whether it's saying they made an error, they did not have authority at all to do something, or they did have an obligation to approve something, or they applied their discretion, or they interpreted the code differently. Something says, if the floor area of a building can't be more than 10,000 feet. Well, if that's all it says and there's some dispute as to whether or not they include the heated area or all of the floor area, the community development director may interpret and say that applies to only the heated floor area. The property owner may say, well, I'd like you to consider, I think it should be all of it. I'm going to appeal that decision. That decision will come to this board to consider whether or not the community development director accurately interpreted the zoning ordinance.
Paul, I've got a question for
Yep.
you. So let's say we have a design review board approves a demolition and somebody objects to that. Does that go back to staff and then come to us as a secondary appeal? That hasn't happened before, but I'm just curious how that works out.
Yeah, I'd have to look at what the ordinance says was specific to a separate board. That there are other departments, and I'd have to get back to you with whether a specific demolition permit is one that comes to this board or not. Typically, the zoning ordinance will set out certain appeals of if there are decisions made by other boards, whether they go to council, whether they go to this board, or whether they go directly to court. So,
Paul, is that something to do with standing if the applicant can appeal or the neighbor can appeal?
there's certain levels of degrees of separation from a particular decision that you have to have some impact to your property. So someone on one side of town who's not impacted by a setback, 8 miles away, isn't going to necessarily get to appeal the decision of the community development director in terms of the decision that they make on that one piece of property. That we'll try to address that ahead of time. We haven't really had any, maybe some have come in, but I don't recall having too many. Typically, you're going to get the people that are most impacted that are going to take the time and effort and, pay an application fee to come in and appeal that decision. And if you ever have any questions about that, feel free to ask staff or myself. If you say, hey, do they actually have standing on this? We can look into that and look at those opinions. All right. You probably hear in Hodge's opening statement that the Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial body. Basically, what that means is a little different from the City Council in that this board takes information presented to it at a hearing, including the staff analysis, which is presented to you, and render a decision applying the 4 criteria to that set of facts. The importance of that is that when it goes up to appeal, if it does to the Superior Court, then the Superior Court can only look at the information that was in the record before you. And if there was evidence in the record before you that supports your decision, the Superior Court is going to uphold that decision. the Superior Court's not going to go back and weigh how much evidence there was and whether the preponderance of the evidence supported it. They're just going to say, was there any evidence to reach that decision? As long as there's some evidence in the record to reach that decision, you're going to get upheld. And that's the benefit. A quasi-legislative decision, the court can go back and look at it and reevaluate it with all in the information that was presented at the court hearing.
One of the things that we've spoke about in our previous training sessions is when you're making a decision or having a discussion, make sure you reference those 4 criteria in your explanation as to why you either support it or don't support the decision, because it helps out the city and the city attorney, and it also explains to the audience and the applicant why exactly we're making the decision that we're making.
Is there anything that we can approve or deny here that could get the city in trouble?
Sort of anybody can sue anybody at any time. So we'll start with that explanation. In terms of there's really not typically going to be a lot of liability for a decision, like financial or damages liability for a decision. Theoretically, could it get reversed? Possibly. It's actually really difficult for a variance decision to get reversed because the criteria are not necessarily, they're not cut and dry. If someone comes in with these facts, there are 4 specific criteria, and that technically you're applying those specific criteria to the specific decision. But obviously, is it consistent with the zoning ordinance? Well, consistent is a pretty broad term that, is in, your interpretation of what consistent might be different from yours.
Yeah, that was kind of what if we approve, I don't know, a pool that's 5 feet within a setback, and then in the same meeting, not approve a pool that's 4 feet within the setback,
Possible.
can we or the city get in trouble for?
Sure, and you know what? That's my next slide that I started talking about precedence of decisions, and the concept that I think you're thinking of is equal protection or precedent.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fine line. You have to treat everybody equally. So if 2 people come to you with exactly equal properties, asking for exactly the same relief, you should theoretically reach exactly the same decision. However, in Georgia, property is deemed unique, and it's virtually impossible to have exactly the same situation. Whether it's a 2-foot slope versus a 1-foot slope on the area we're talking about, the exact square footage, the neighbor that's built their house 5 feet or 10 feet from the property line, the road is 40 feet from an intersection or 240 feet from an intersection. There's going to be numerous factors that could play into each particular decision. So each decision should stand on its own and not really worry about what you've done before. That being said, I do want you to be mindful of what are the relevant facts. I will argue, if it goes to court and I'm forced to stand up and say, no, this was a unique case, I will find every different fact about the property that's different from another one. Rest assured. That being said, to avoid those situations, if you've got this very, very, very similar relevant facts about each one, then I would expect to have likely the same results, approve or, and generally speaking, approve or deny. That being said, conditions make a lot of difference too. You could approve one because you were able to put conditions on it, but if you couldn't, if there just weren't a way to make the conditions, in another one that's very similar because of something next door or whatever the situation might be, it might result in a denial. But approval with a lot of conditions may almost have the same effect as denial. I don't know. But try to be as consistent as possible, but don't really worry overly about the true impact of precedent. I will always say property is generally unique. Apply it to each particular situation standing on its own merits.
So if people come and object to a variance, like neighbors, is that say two properties were the exact same, we approve one because all the neighbors were fine with it, we don't allow the other one because the neighbors didn't want it. Is there precedence there, or is that?
I would tell you, if that is theoretical, if all of the facts are the same, I would tend to say that it should reach the same result, because the neighbor objection isn't really the difference in a planning concept.
Thank you.
Here are the 4 standards that you look at, and this is what should be front and center of each decision, kind of as you think about approve or deny. 1, relief if granted would not offend the spirit or intent of the zoning ordinance. Again, that's the broad overall category. Are we, if, setback, is a setback intended to protect the neighbors from overly intrusive construction? Well, if you can put up, if that's what you consider to be the intent and spirit of the zoning ordinance when it establishes the setback, then maybe if they can put up some landscaping that blocks the view from the neighbor, maybe they're still consistent with the spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance. Such extraordinary, exceptional situation or conditions, whether little or strict application, would create an unnecessary hardship. That's going to be something that's always tricky. And it's probably the one that perhaps gets kind of glossed over a little bit when things come in, because a lot of people want to do something and they claim the hardship is, I can't do what I want to do. So I can go into court and say, that's not really a hardship. A lot easier than I can go into court and defend, well, yeah, it was a hardship that they couldn't have the stone statue, in the back, corner of the lot, as opposed to 20 feet in from the, finding a hardship. And there may be some, there are going to be some situation, and if someone will say, well, we inherited this issue. Yeah, if it's always a hard thing to do. You kind of need to internalize what you think a hardship is and just kind of go from there. I would probably say 90%, maybe not quite that high, but close to them, really don't have a hardship that you would say, look, they really won't be able to build or do something with this property if they don't get a variance. I mean, if one's got 4 streams and they have to build a house and put the septic, and there's only so much room to put a 800 square foot house on it, if they can't get a buffer from this one in the slopes or whatever, okay, that's typically the type of situation that variances were. The basic understanding was, if we have written a code that prevents you from building on this property or building something reasonable on the property, that's when the variance is supposed to come into play. In practical terms, what has happened in the past, and happens in virtually every jurisdiction that exists, is it's kind of overlooked as long as nobody really objects and it makes sense at the time.
Paul, can you talk to the hardship, for example? It comes up somewhat frequently. Well, my neighbor has a pool. Why shouldn't I have a pool? And referencing that as a hardship.
Yeah, here's what I can say. That I think in the 12 years that I've been representing this body, I think twice I've seen someone put forth an argument that says something along the lines of, like, a pool, not having a pool is a hardship. And that is to say, everybody else on this cul-de-sac has a pool. If I don't have a pool, I can't sell my house because I'm the only one that doesn't have a pool. They'll buy someone else's house. They'll buy somewhere else. My house isn't marketable without a pool. Whether or not it's true or not, they've at least made an effort to show that is a hardship to them. Whether the fact that your neighbor has a pool and you don't, I personally would say that's not a hardship to you. And a lot of times, I take a fairly hard line on it. Just reading the law as it's written, it's not a hardship that you don't have what you want.
I mean, it refers to it refers to the particular piece of property. So going along with exactly what you're saying, these neighbors have pools. I don't have a pool, but my property just isn't the right fit for the pool like they have or something like that. I mean, at what point is there kind of a, or my property slopes, no one else does. So I need to, do something in a setback to build that so I can have a flat yard for the pool or something like that. I mean, they still just want a pool, but the property makes it difficult. But what consistency is there hardship for somebody that's like, I just don't have enough property back there. So because that property is just not big enough for my guest house.
Yeah, I mean, my personal response from a legal perspective is likely that factor was, or that fact was factored into the price of the property.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a smaller property, then there are a lot of things you can't do. So the value of the property is a little bit less than one that's a little bit bigger that you can do those things. Also, if you didn't have room for a pool, then the price of the property or the house was less than if you did have room for a pool back there or a guest house or whatever. So, and most people don't consider that.
A lot of times it falls to a want versus really the property is not, unbuildable. It's just.
I mean, I will certainly have
right.
I will certainly have an easier time defending not putting in a pool than trying to argue that a pool was necessary in the face of a neighbor arguing that they shouldn't have gotten a pool.
Yeah.
That being said, hey,
I would say
I mean, it can go with a pool. It could be an accessory structure, a guest house. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. It's still the fact that, I think one of them we had was a third garage,
yeah.
I mean, at what point do you need a third garage or do you not need a third garage or a pool or not a pool? I mean, you bought the property as is and it is what it is.
Yeah.
I would, whenever that, tricky situation comes with hardship is very hard to find, I would look at other three standards to see if they're is it really offending the ordinance? Is it really a detriment to the public good? And, and make a judgment on where the line should be drawn, I guess.
And that really comes down to, what is the overall policy of this board going to be, or even individually? I mean, what is your take on which ones play out? I mean, technically, as you can see, and I've highlighted on there, is the word "and" on there.
Yeah.
All four of those by the code have to be present in order to issue a variance. So if somebody wants to challenge the approval, what they will do is come in and say, at least one of those was not present. There was no hardship. That was what a challenge would be. Or they could say, it didn't cause, or it caused substantial detriment to me, the neighbor. All they have to do is find one thing on there, and that could be a successful challenge.
Are we going to talk about pre-city or before the city and before all the codes?
I don't have it specifically, but I'm happy to talk about it to any extent.
So if they're asking for a variance for something that was before the city's codes were in place, is that something that we have to take into account? That it was
Like a grandfathered in type thing?
yeah. How do we?
The grandfathering is kind of a different concept. What grandfathering says is you're allowed to continue to do what was approved and valid under a prior set of rules and regulations. So it's allowed to stay. We're not going to make you take it down because we changed the rules. So we don't, you don't really have to worry about necessarily what the old rules were. What happens is things get, I think the big thing is that things came in platted under stream buffer rules, and they, on the plats, they show them. And the question then becomes, is there a vested right to develop? They haven't developed yet, but they were platted that way. Now, the city has taken some affirmative steps to say, you know what, if there's a valid plat that was issued at a certain time before, perhaps before the city was incorporated, then the city will defer to those standards, notwithstanding the current stream buffers, for example. So so that would mean they wouldn't have to come to you to develop the new, if there's a new building that still has an old plat that hasn't been built in a subdivision yet, if any of those exist, theoretically, if we applied our current standards and 75-foot buffers, and they've got a plat that says only a 40-foot buffer, that they would have to come to you to get the variance. But the city took it on its own to say there's so many of those coming up. We have a number of those situations. Rather than making the board issue a variance and say, hey, look, that wouldn't be fair. It was platted, people purchased reliance on that. We're just going to set the standard for those particular situations. They did write it into the code.
Gotcha.
I'm sorry.
Laura.
I just saw you had a
Yeah.
question.
Oh, no, I was just
Okay.
going to say, I would love to have a copy of that, the variance standards.
Oh,
It should be in the packet somewhere.
yeah, it's always in the staff report
it-
that
Okay.
Could it be something that we have for every meeting that we put right in front of us?
That's my.
No,
point.
I
Of
think it's on
course.
each
staff
page.
report has it, each
Yeah.
application has it, and I can print
Oh,
it
okay.
for you.
Second or third page of each
Yeah,
new case. The first.
They just don't read it into the record because I'm
You
reading it at
mean
the
in
beginning
that
of the meeting.
75-page packet that we got?
I don't ever print those
There's-
out.
there's-
So I would
it's in
love
front
just
of
one
each different
page.
case.
Yeah,
I
Just
sure.
think
just so
somewhere.
that,
sure, we can do that.
I read them, but I don't print them out.
It's,
So that's.
Before you go off this
Yep.
paper, the report is.
Yeah,
There
see,
it is.
that's what I didn't want to
on
have
each
to
one.
do.
It's always on
during
like
the
the
meeting.
second page.
Yeah, it's,
I keep wanting to hit the print button right here.
Well,
but-
That, it
That was
goes
this
for
one. Okay.
20 minutes.
That's all.
So on these four, I mean, I know we
Okay,
can't change any of this, but as you, I'm sure are aware, a lot of other cities, it's an or, not an and. And I don't know whoever made the decision in the beginning of Milton and said this is and, but yeah, I just, like we said, number 2 is very difficult, the hardship. It almost seems to me that if the city ever looked at it, like it should be like 1, 3, and 4 have to be met, or you have to have a number 2, a hardship. I mean, it just is very difficult, number 2, but I understand your explanation and how we have to treat it, but it's, it's strange.
I will say, that's why I say, technically, that, to me, on paper, sounds hard to meet. As a practical matter, and we represent about 10 different jurisdictions across the state,
Mhm.
probably even more now. I would say more, not universal by any stretch, but more will actually have all of those in there, and and there are some that aren't. But as a practical matter, I won't say that holds up as strongly as any of the other ones.
It's tough every time you think about it, every case
Yeah.
when I think about it, I think about the number 2 and say, anyway.
It's almost kind of like hardship, and this may be how it's hardship is proportional to how much objection there is. It's a little bit of a hardship to me, and since nobody else is objecting, that little bit of hardship is enough to qualify as the hardship, and that may be how people kind of think about it. So, just FYI, so occasionally you'll get a variance to the sign ordinance, and it's a very different standard. If someone comes in with a sign, the standard is existing foliage or structures bring about a hardship, again, talking a hardship thrown in there, whereby a sign meeting the minimum letter size and square footage cannot be read from an adjoining public road. Typically, you're going to get businesses that say, I just want a bigger sign, I want a second sign on the other side. This is technically what they should be arguing is their problem, that their sign can't be seen if they use the minimum letter size. Haven't had a lot of those in a while.
Well, we tell them, you're not gonna get it, so we don't even bring them here.
Remember we had the ones
Probably
over
had
the
3
Starbucks.
signs.
The Starbucks,
yeah.
we
Yeah,
got,
whichever
we got
direction.
one Starbucks and that was like, my bad, I had given them permit.
We had one guy that said, I'm gonna just move out of my business out of the city now. Remember him? He brought his sign in. I don't know if you remember that one.
It was the fitness gym.
Hmm?
The fitness gym.
I'm sorry, fitness. Yeah, did you mention that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
Then there's stream buffers. They have slightly different requirements. But essentially, this is just to set out the rule. A lot of times, because there's 3 levels of stream protection, you got the state protection as a 25-foot buffer. The city can't do anything about it. City can't let you do anything inside within 25 feet of a stream. The first 25 feet, no jurisdiction for us to allow them to do anything. They'd have to go to the state to get any approval for that. Our code then sets back an undisturbed buffer, which means don't do anything, don't work, don't scrape and replant, don't just have access to while you're building. It's a undisturbed vegetated buffer for the next 25 feet. So when they say the 50-foot buffer, that's the state's 25, and then we have jurisdiction over the next 25 foot saying not to do anything in that 25 feet. Then there's a third 25 feet, which you'll hear referred to as the 75-foot setback or the impervious setback. When that says is you can disturb, you can, move dirt around, you can clear some space, but what you can't do is put impervious surface back into that 75-foot buffer. So you basically can't put structures in that. But that's just for your clarification, if that wasn't clear, and a lot of times public doesn't necessarily understand that.
So one of the conditions that we've put in previous situations where they were close to that 50-foot buffer is we've required that they put in tree save to make sure that the contractors and everybody is staying out of that area. So that is certainly a condition that we can put on. It's really up to us whether we want to include it or not.
Yeah, it's a good thing to prevent the oopses for that undisturbed buffer. And I put up the stream buffer standard. Technically, they're different. They come from a different section, but in effect, they're largely the same, which is shape, topography, other physical conditions, prevents land development unless a buffer variance is granted, and unusual circumstances would create an extreme hardship. So again, it's hardship and basically it's hardship to the property if they didn't get the buffer. Again, what constitutes a hardship? How much prevention of development exists? If you can't put the corner of your garage, your detached garage in the buffer, it's up to you. All right, that's kind of the basics of your job. More moving into practicalities. And we're halfway through. This is the general nature of the agenda that you'll see. Nothing too much about it, introduction pledge. The adoption amendment of the agenda. This is the time at the top of your meeting where you can decide what order things appear in. While they'll be listed in a particular order, if, for instance, someone has requested to withdraw or has requested to postpone, you can do that up front of the meeting and, make a motion to amend the agenda to remove item 6C or whatever it might be. Or you just adopt the agenda as presented,
Or if there's like 100 people to talk, put them at the end. That way someone will leave, so not all of them speak.
It's certainly, it's a practical fact. It used to be, we would have like secondary variances or appeals, up front. Probably pretty harsh for the people that want to wait behind an hour and a half appeal hearing. So things, that's what is supposed to happen at that one. Consideration of the minutes, and I don't remember if I've got the full set of discussion of the minutes, but let me just do it right here. The minutes are a record of what happened at the meeting. They, if the minutes don't accurately reflect what happened at that meeting, this is your chance to make sure that what you approve does reflect what happened. So if you made a second on a motion and you see that, if David, you made the second, but as the minutes reflect Barry made the second, someone can say, hey, just wanted to change the minutes to reflect that order. I did it now, but
Is that important?
it is to an extent. I had one case where the case boiled down to the minutes because the minutes didn't reflect the fact that a public hearing was opened. So the person who was disappointed said, well, there was no public hearing because the minutes don't reflect that a public hearing was opened. Now, we'd bring people that were at the meeting, the former county attorney and the former county manager, and say, I swear, I testify and swear that the public hearing was open. There was a public hearing. So we were arguing about that and what could be presented. But this is the official record of what happened. So we want to get it accurate so we don't get into that argument. I mean, it has happened. That's once in.
Now that we have video, we don't worry
Yeah,
about a
and-
lot of typing.
Theoretically, it shouldn't really happen, but this is your chance. Theoretically, instead of just, I move that we approve the minutes as presented, that's hopefully the way it's going to go every time because the minutes are perfect and you've done it. But just if you want to take a look at them and make sure that you agree with what happened. I will say it's not a time to change what you did or said. If you said something that you don't like now, you can't go back and say, hey, I want to scratch that from the agenda or from the minutes because I don't want that on the record. It's not what this step in the meeting is to accomplish. It's just to make sure that what happened is accurately reflected in the minutes. Hodge reads a statement, then we go into the primary variances. If any, there's the appeals or the secondary variances, old business, new business, and adjournment. Typically, if there's something specific, and really, if there's nothing listed on old or new business, theoretically, at the adoption and amendment of the agenda, if you wanted to add something, that would be the time to put something on there, but usually
Yeah,
you get to.
what
Does
would
anybody
that-
have any new business?
Yeah, what would be considered old business or new business?
If at one meeting you say, hey, we'd like, the board would like staff to go back and look at how many variances we're getting, every month and, on what topics, you might put that in old business
Sure.
to reflect that it was, or, I mean, there's no legal impact to it really.
Yeah.
It's just an agenda item that there's something outside of the primary and secondary variances.
Okay.
Just- This is from the bylaws, and it spells out the steps that go for each public hearing for a variance. Chair identifies the application. Staff presents the application. You get up and read presents their history of the application and what is being requested and the background. This board can address questions to staff regarding the application. Then the chair declares the public hearing open, calls for the applicant to come up. Applicant makes their presentation. The board can ask questions to the applicant. The chair calls for anyone wishing to speak in support. Now, I've identified here that there's supposed to be a combined time limit of 10 minutes for both the applicant and the public. Now, the way your minutes or your procedures are written, there's a question period in there. And it gets kind of wishy-washy as to what amount of time is the applicant's time and what amount of time was the questions. There is a time for questions after the pros and cons. It's easier to time it but it doesn't necessarily make practical sense. If you have a question right then and there, they're there before you. If you have a general question that could wait until after everyone's spoken, it's easier to count the applicant's time. We haven't run into a lot of situations where we've run into 10 minutes. A lot of times the applicant will run over 10 minutes if there are questions. It's rare that anyone will get up and go more than 10 minutes as the applicant on their own. But if we start asking questions, it's possible. We try to do the best we can. That being said, if we see that you've gone 10, 12, 15 minutes, including questions, and there are still those that want to speak in favor, what you can do is you can make a motion to extend the time for speakers. It would have to apply to both applicants and opponents. You can extend it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You can do it 7 times. If you want to go 1 minute at a time, or for each speaker, you can do that. If you want to say 5 minutes for the remaining speakers, you can do that. But the key point is both pro and con, whichever way you do it, you have to give it to both sides equally. That's for state law.
Can we use that as the,
Well, to be honest, I've not used that one. I was just using ours.
Hodge usually times them.
Yeah, I'll try to time it. Maybe what I'll do is I'll work on allowing the actual presentation to happen first and then stop. And then we can go into if we're going to go into a conversation back and forth, at least we know what their presentation time is.
Yeah, ideally, if the board can do that, even if you ask questions while they're still there, if they get through their presentation and say, and I'll be happy to take questions, then it's pretty easy to say, okay, that was their presentation. We'll call that 5 minutes, and anybody else would have 5 minutes.
okay. Do we need to let them know? I mean, do we tell them, hey, you've got 10 minutes to speak? Or do we just time
I don't remember if that's in
Is that
part
in
of
your
your
thing?
It isn't. We haven't really enforced it. Typically, vast majority of the cases that come, there aren't a whole lot of speakers, either in support or.
Yeah, it usually comes up if there's a large opposition, and I think at the top of,
worried about tonight?
Yeah. So yeah,
Let's
it
talk
would be
about
nice
this.
to
Right.
just tell them that we have combined 10
We have
minutes.
5 minutes
to-
total for each side. Thank you.
Right.
nope,
That might
gotta
not
be
work.
10 minutes. 10 minutes
10 minutes total.
minimum. State law,
I mean,
10
does
minutes
this,
per
does-
side?
per
do
side,
these
not
not work, or do we not have access to it?
Well, I
I mean, if it's not that big of a, I just thought it would be good
It
for,
would be really good because they can also see how
That's
much
what I
time
was
is
thinking.
left, but I've never really.
I would volunteer to be timekeeper. Needed somebody.
Well, I have a
And
stopwatch. I'll just bring that.
Right.
And Tammy always interjecting, you have 1 minute in the middle of them talking.
Yeah.
I gotta learn from IT.
Okay,
There's a this
so
sitting up here.
Does that work?
I don't know.
I really want
I
to
haven't tried to
understand
do
this.
anything
So
with
say we have a big crowd and it is 10 minutes and no more. Is that?
Unless we
That
extend
is,
it.
as
the
written,
minimum.
A minimum.
as written in our bylaws, it is 10 minutes right now.
Okay, so
It's a
each
maximum
side.
right now.
For each side.
For each, 10 minutes each side is the maximum pursuant to the bylaws, subject to being extended.
okay, so okay.
If you
Sorry.
want to, ahead of time, if you know you've got 7 speakers, on each side, and you go, there's no way each person is only going to speak a minute and a half, and there's virtually no reason. The first 2 or 3 are going to speak 7 minutes each, almost universally,
Yeah.
if there's a real impassioned
So-
opposition.
So we'll know that though before each one comes
Some
up
of
because
it.
you'll have the cards, right? You'll have the cards.
Yeah, I'll have the.
And so
cards.
you'll be able to tell us, okay, there's X many
Yeah.
people that want to
Yeah.
speak on this, at
Yes.
which point we can say, okay,
You can at any time take care. If you get through the first person and they took 7 minutes and there's still 5 left, you can think about doing it. If-
Okay.
or could we
So-
limit them to 5? Could we limit so let's say the applicant, right? And the pros, that's 10 minutes, or unless we extend it, obviously. But we would say, okay, the applicant, you have 5 minutes. And then if there's 2 or 3 people, then they have a total time of, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, or something like that. I mean, you say each other additional person has 2 minutes each. And then the applicant gets, obviously they have more time. Would that be unfair for any reason?
Well, the other thing is you can, if you go an additional 5 minutes and you can kind of manage it off that and ask them not to repeat the same questions or same responses over and
Yeah.
over. If they've got something new to add, to share that information.
Yeah.
And it's the board's decision that you do not have to, that there's no obligation that everybody gets to speak. That being said, I know
Okay.
politically and personally, it's you don't want to tell someone, hey, thanks for showing up, but we can't hear you. But, it's up to you to manage how the board itself wants to maintain that. We've got a 10-minute time limit, but, how strict are you going to be with it?
I think it's a good idea to, if people get up here and want to speak. So, I mean, I can almost guarantee you I will be watching how many cards there are, because on council, it was always discussed ahead of time, and we gave each side the same amount, but if the room was packed, it was always extended,
Certainly.
just because.
Mhm. They're
you know,
coming out.
I know,
Yeah.
and we don't want to be that bored.
I don't recall ever having someone not get to speak because time ran out. That they at least,
Yeah.
someone said, I'm here, I really want to speak. And I said, I'm sorry, your time's up.
Well, I guess it gets back to my point of, are you going to give everybody 5 minutes? Are you going to give them 2 minutes, 3 minutes? Like what?
I mean, some
is
people are gonna get up
reasonable
there and
under the
speak for
circumstances if
10
there's-
seconds.
If there's 5 people, there probably will be 5 people at least,
I will
here
tell
on
you,
one
if-
side.
If you don't go, I'm going to give 5 more minutes for the total. It's a lot easier to keep track of, to say when, typically it's going to be the opponents that have more.
Sure.
So you say, okay, we'll give the opponents an additional 10 minutes. There's 5 people left. That works out to about 2 minutes each.
Mhm.
But rather than going, okay, 2 minutes each, okay, they took a minute and a half, they took 4 minutes, and then trying to say, okay, applicant, you now have
No,
7 minutes
I'm
and
just
45
saying,
seconds.
like each, you have 2 minutes to speak. If you don't use it, you don't use
So
it,
that
but you
works
time
best.
2 minutes.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
that
Where
wor- yeah,
2
that-
minutes, use a minute, great. Next person, they get 2 minutes, and then you just,
Two-
I don't know what's easier. I'm just trying to figure out a strategy for
purposes
us to
of
keep track.
Individual setting of 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes works. I mean, I can
Yeah, I
speak
think
to that.
it's
5 minutes
better
is
to
a
have
lot.
10
Oh,
minutes
no,
on.
that's what I'm saying, not to have
Yeah.
5 minutes. That's what
Rather
I'm
than
trying
saying,
to say.
minutes.
rather than saying
2
each speaker
minutes.
gets 2 minutes and
Yeah.
then they only take 30 seconds, it's kind of, then you get the applicant who has an additional 10 minutes, even though other people took 4.5 minutes. But I mean, it could happen
They
either
can-
way.
They can waive that too.
Oh, yeah.
Either side can say, no, I'm done.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
but it's more I think it's easier if you say you have 2 minutes, say you got 20 people that want to speak, 2 minutes each, and then, it's easier on the front
And-
end.
Or
for
you're
you.
saying the opposite, or the other way to potentially manage that is what? Just go with the 10 minutes, see what happens, and say, hey, we're going to extend for 10 more minutes for each person. So, in order to give everybody time, make it quick. Is that kind of where you're at?
You can do it either way. Either way works. It's for purposes of the minutes and putting it down, saying time is extended 10 minutes for both sides. As opposed to, 2 minutes per person, but if 2 of them at the end don't get up and speak, then, well, does the applicant get to count those 2 minutes who were supposedly coming up or not? There's it's like 2 steps of figuring out what the applicant's time is as opposed to 1 step. But you can hold the feet to the fire of the first person that gets up and speaks if you've given 2 minutes to each person rather than 10 minutes for all 5.
So one of the things that I'm thinking is that we can ask Shruba how many people are here to speak in support and how many are to speak in opposition, and then make that determination
That's a good plan
based on
at the front end.
the front end of it, and say that we're going to allow, it's got to be the minimum of 10, but then we can say, okay, they've got 30 people that are going to speak. Maybe we need to give them 20 minutes.
Yeah, so if we tell them in advance, hey, each side has X amount of time, that gets in their head, okay,
Yeah.
you got to be quick because there's X amount of
Yeah,
speakers.
Because they usually come with something prepared. And so, you just want to give them a heads up. I mean, I got to get from 5 minutes down to 2.
They want to
You
get
know.
out what they came to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Hey,
just
well, it's 2
fair.
minutes, and then
Even
another
if
2
3
minutes, so
people ahead of them have all
Yeah.
said the same thing,
Yeah,
that's
I
still what
know,
they
but
came to
they
say,
came.
right?
I know, and it happens.
It does. Do the best you can as you're going along. The only thing that I will ever ask or remind is that it be equal for the pros and cons. That's the
What?
only
Say
legal
that?
requirement. And it'd be a minimum of 10 minutes to start with, but we've got that. in the
Equal
code.
for each side,
Yeah, okay.
whatever that is, whatever amount it
Yep.
is.
We'll have to make a motion in order to increase the time allotted over the 10 minutes.
Yes.
And anybody can make that
Me
motion.
too, yeah,
Yes.
so we're good so far.
Okay. We got like 10
Yeah.
minutes. So any of the opposition, the applicant, if there is time left, can speak in rebuttal. We don't have a specific provision which says the applicant gets to reserve specific time. So if there are proponents that come up and take the remainder, if they wanted to reserve 4 minutes, but somebody speaks in favor of their application and uses the remaining 4 minutes, theoretically, they don't have time to speak in rebuttal.
Right.
Again, that's a situation where you could extend the time. Again, it's tricky because it's both sides, and then when would the opponents get to speak? Because theoretically, the applicant is supposed to get the last word.
And
Probably
oftentimes, you get the opportunity to let that applicant address some of the concerns that have come up.
Yeah, you can use it in your questions. I mean, you can do,
And I talked to
this is sometimes people do it, it's like, hey, it's been said, hey, the hearing is, the public comment portion is closed. But if you're asking questions, a lot of times someone will say, hey, I'd like to call that person out there. Did you have something to say? That's my question to the, it says applicant, speakers, and staff, if it's been used. It's better if you want to control how long your meeting lasts, if you can be strict about, your time limit and say, I'm sorry, we've extended that. We can't really take more comments. But if the applicant needs to rebut some things and you're not sure what you can say, Mr. Applicant, Miss Applicant, what would you say to the people that objected to the distance from the intersection? Make their comments at that way. There are also an opportunity to ask questions of staff if anything came up during, someone mentioned that it's too close to the stream on that side. Staff, is it too close, or can they come back and do this 6 months later, or anything like that? That's another time to do that. Theoretically, once Hodge declares the public hearing closed, after there's no more questions to staff, no more questions to the applicant, no more questions to the opponents. It's supposed to be just your discussion. You've taken in all of the information. That's the record that would go up on appeal. That's the facts that you are relying on. That's all that you are supposed to be considering in your decision.
How much of should we have discussion after it's closed, or should we have a discussion after the motion's been?
The way the code is written, you have a motion. The first thing theoretically to happen is a motion. That's to approve, to deny, to approve the conditions.
Okay.
And all of that is subject to change, amendment, withdrawal. It's the way it's written is you get a motion, you get a second, and then you start talking about it. And again, that motion can change. It can be, it can be withdrawn and restated. It can be amended. Amendment is a withdraw, and restate is basically a two-step process that only the person making the motion has to deal with. And the second, they just say, I'd like to withdraw my motion. The second agrees. Then they restate it. The second reasserts their second.
So if they make a motion to approve something that I don't like, and they second it, and then I can start discussing, well, why didn't you think about, or this is what I was thinking, this is what I was, all this stuff, and then we vote on it?
Well, no. Then it can work many ways. It could work that you convince.
And then
Say Laura made the motion.
Away.
Yeah,
So you convince
okay,
Laura's like, you know what?
Got it.
That's right. You know what? I'm opposed to it now. I'll withdraw my motion to approve.
I mean, it could be a situation where every time we just say, hey, motion to deny, a second, and then we discuss it, withdraw that, and then make a good motion even.
Yeah.
Okay.
A better motion, depending on the situation. Like that
It could.
So it's
just
okay
very well
to,
be it.
to put your cards on the table and not hold them until the vote type of thing? I mean, if I don't like the variance, if I don't want to approve
Absolutely.
it, then it's okay just to say, I don't like this. I think this is, I don't know, whatever.
Doesn't meet the criteria.
Yeah.
But what you're saying from earlier in the training is you'd like us to state, why we're denying or approving something.
Based on those four
Yeah.
statements.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, just to assert there is a basis according to those criteria, whether it's I don't believe it met this, that, or the other criteria, or
Yeah.
I believe it met all of the criteria, and you can discuss to what extent.
That's part of our motion, though. Is that what you're saying? As part of the motion, we need to say that it does or does not meet the criteria and how or
Just
why.
make the motion as,
Or no,
Motion
is that
second,
right
and then
now?
you get
Or
into
you do it after
discussion.
you get a second?
I think as part of the discussion is the justification
Okay.
for it.
Okay.
During our discussion period, we've tended to go back and ask questions to staff, and I think even ask questions to the applicant. I've been at fault of that myself doing that. Should we not do that once we're in discussion? Because then we open up all this question and it extends everything, and I don't know, but
Yeah,
we need
I-
information, right?
Yeah, it's tricky. Technically, you're not supposed to. I know it happens a lot. The more legal-ish, like what does the code say type of questions isn't really a problem. Are we allowed to do that? Does the code say that they have to do that? Those sort of questions are probably okay. If you're starting to say, well, if they did this, would that get approved? Do you favor this? What's the history of this, that, or the other thing? How many times has this happened in the past? That starts to get into more of the record that we want to keep. And theoretically, it should be, Hodge.
Before he closes.
Yeah. I know that the discussion may bring these things up. Technically, what should happen is the public hearing, the hearing is reopened to ask questions of staff. And Hodge, if you wanted, if we were to do it perfectly, Hodge would say, I'm going to reopen the hearing to ask questions of staff, ask some questions of staff, and then you can close the hearing. And
so if we've got a question related to the overall process, for example, withdrawing a motion, et cetera, do we need to?
That's fine.
That aspect is fine, because that's
Yeah.
more of process.
procedural type question, absolutely. One or the other, you can ask those. That's what I'm saying. If you start getting into what's the history, what has happened with other applications, those sort of, how far back is it really? Has it, have you been out there? Did you see, how tall are the trees that are out there? Those sort of questions really need to be into the record. But all the questions about, what can we withdraw? Can we do that? That's okay. That's totally fine. And hey, ask and we'll find out if I say, you'll need to open the hearing for that.
Okay.
Right.
So I think we need to stop it here.
I'm going to,
pause.
let me, I hear them and I just want to see if there's anything. Secondary variances, we'll go over the very, 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 very different process and set of criteria. When one comes up, I will try to send out something to give you a heads up and to put you on notice of what's going to happen, because it's a very different process. Motions and conditions are pretty big things, but I don't have time to go over all of those. May need to try the second half of this at another point in time. But
I'll make a motion to adjourn the training session.
I'll second.
We got a motion to adjourn from Hodge and a second from David Jackson. Is there any discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously.
Can we get the packets?
Y'all have fun. I'm so sorry. We're on a webinar tonight, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I kind of want to stay.
Motion, the second, and then the discussion.
That's right.
Help me out with
I
that.
will.
It's really going to be hard.
Woo!
Just going to look at me like, all right, shut up.
Everyone who's going to speak, please fill out the yellow comment card. Yellow comment. If you guys are going to speak, please fill out the yellow comment card like this.
Yes,
guy.
I knew she was up.
Oh, yeah, wait till high school.
They call like late at night every
I
time.
know.
Like
Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to the City of Milton Board of Zoning Appeals, August 16th, 2022 meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. The next, item 3 on our, let me see. Yep. I'll begin with, to my left, with roll call.
Hi, I'm Laura Bentley.
Adam Danella.
Hodge Patel.
Don Kurtz.
Barry Cohen.
And for the record, David Jackson is not here this evening, and Zach Stafford is not here this evening. Item 3 on our agenda is approval of the agenda as published.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
A second.
We've got a motion from Laura Bentley and a second from Adam Danella to approve the agenda as published. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is to approve the July 19th, 2022 meeting minutes as published.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the July 19th, 2022 meeting minutes.
Second. We've got a motion from Laura Bentley and a second from Hodge Patel to approve the July 19th, 2022 minutes as published. Is there any discussion?
I was not present for that meeting.
All those in favor of approving the July 19th, 2022 meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Down,
Abstain.
abstain. The motion passes unanimously. Item 5 on our agenda is consideration of primary variances. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial board comprised of resident volunteers of the City of Milton. The board is charged with hearing requests for variances from the standards of the zoning ordinance and appeals of administrative determination. With regards to the decision on primary variances, the board's basis for decisions is provided by these 4 considerations. A, relief if granted would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance. And B, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant. And C, relief, if granted, would not cause substantial detriment to the public good or surrounding properties. And D, that the public's safety, health, and welfare are secured and the substantial justice is done. Staff, please present V22-13360 Gunnison Hall Circle.
Yep. V23-2213-360 Gunston Hall Circle. Requested variance is to allow the lot coverage for an AG1 zone property that fronts a public street to increase from maximum allowed 20% to 24.2%, and to allow existing deck to encroach into 50-foot rear setback by 16 feet and allow existing corner of home to encroach into 50-foot rear setback by 1 foot. The site is 1.01 acre parcel located in Providence Lake subdivision. It's shown in Exhibit B. Property is zoned AG1 and is located in rural Milton Overlay District. Applicable setbacks for the lot are 60-foot front, 50-foot rear, 25-foot side. The house was built in 1994 and Fulton County zoning setbacks, which are same as Milton, should have been followed. In April 2022, the homeowner applied for a pool permit to the Community Development Department, which revealed the non-compliance house to the staff. As shown in Exhibit C, the existing deck and a corner of the house are encroaching the rear yard setback. The applicant is seeking to allow the existing corner of the home to encroach into 50-foot rear setback by 1 foot and the existing deck to encroach the 50-foot rear setback by 16 feet. In addition, the applicant is seeking a variance to allow the lot coverage of AG1 zone property that fronts public street to increase from maximum allowed 20% to 24.2%. The applicant bought the property in 2018, and the existing lot coverage is 24.7%. It's detailed in Exhibit D. Okay, all right, I think this is the one. All right. The applicant is proposing to reduce the existing lot coverage by removing 943 square feet of stone walkway in the side yard. The total square footage of the proposed pool addition is 713 square feet. When you include the 943 square feet of stone walkway to be removed, this is an overall reduction of 230 square feet, lowering the proposed total lot coverage from 24.7% to 24.2%. The applicant met with the city development engineer on July 29th and is agreeable to the water quality treatment for all new impervious surface through permitting process. The adjacent neighbor support map, which is this one, is showing all three neighbors are in support of this applicant. The photos of the property are detailed in Exhibit E, and the letters of support are also included in the staff report. On August 2nd, 2022, DRB met and had following comment. DRB recommends approval of the variance. We actually received a new site plan yesterday from the applicant, and it's included in your packet. It's it should have a stamp received August 15, and that actually shows the flow well. So when Michael typed in this, it said that if approved, staff recommends following condition for site plan from solar land survey received on I would say August 15, because that's what the latest one we received. And the water quality treatment to be provided, which is provided on the newest plan. He has provided 4 flow wells. So that's the condition is recommended by the staff. Any questions?
Let's see. So how many people do we have that are going to be speaking this evening? Do we have a count on that
We
yet?
just have applicant.
Just the applicant?
Yeah.
Okay. You have any questions?
Yeah,
Does the applicant want to come forward? Sorry.
okay. Yeah, applicant. come on.
Hey, my name is Nick Fuller.
Hi, can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, Nick Fuller, 360 Gunson Hall Circle, Milton, Georgia, 30004.
Want to tell us a little bit about your project?
Yeah. So
Variance.
first, thank you guys for taking the time to hear me out. We moved into the property about 4 years ago. We actually moved from the city of Alpharetta because we had a much smaller lot. We moved out here because it was over an acre lot. We thought we were going to easily be able to put a pool. We started this process, COVID hit, dealt with a bunch of contractors, and then finally got to this point. And we found out that where we are at, it's a 20% impervious structure ratio or lot coverage. So then we started going through the site plans and realized that the previous owner had put well over the lot coverage, so at 24.7. And so we're scratching our heads trying to make this thing work to figure out a way to be able to put in a pool, but also still help with water quality and everything. That's where we worked with the planning board. And that's why we were saying she kind of stole my thunder. She said everything that I was going to say, but we're taking it down to 24.2 if you would allow us, by taking out stone walkways all around the house. And then also adding in 4 flow well systems, which would accommodate up to 22.8 gallons per minute. And that's more than adequate for like 1,500 square foot of impervious structures. And those would be down at the bottom of the base of the pool next to the overflow. The only other thing I had to say was just about the deck. The deck, he built it over by 16 feet. We were unaware when we bought the home. All I can do is apologize for it, but I didn't do it.
Shriva, can you put the site plan up so we can take a look at that?
Site plan, you can zoom in. So this is the deck. Road walkway that will be removed.
So everything over in this side here. And then on this side, there's stone walkway that comes around this edge that will be removed as well. And that, all that added up equates to the 943 square foot. And so what we'd be adding in is this pool area with the spa, and that including all the steps and coping around it, is 713 square feet.
So the stone walkway that you're contemplating removing, would that be replaced with something, another pervious surface?
Grass.
Grass, okay.
Yes. Grass.
And then what about the road, or from the road coming in?
You're talking about the main road here?
Yeah, it looks like there's a sidewalk that comes off of the road, just a little bit north of where you're at.
There's no sidewalk that comes off the road. Oh, you're talking about right here?
Yes.
That one would remain. That one is, it technically, yes, it could be removed. It does look nice from the street. We would rather not remove it, but if we had to, I guess we would go there too.
Have you prepared any kind of plan that, or work to come up with a plan that would put you at the 20% or less?
There is,
I mean, just
because
just like you said, y'all didn't work up something that removed that particular path. I
right.
mean, what would that, if you did take out that part of the path and made it pea gravel or,
Yeah.
river rock or something different that would be pervious, did you consider that or look into that to try to reduce?
We did
the,
not consider
percentage?
taking out this, just because this portion up here is about 200 and I want to say it was like 255 square foot. If you add in this area here coming up, and then this one that's right here in front of the house right here, that's an additional 255 square foot. Yep. The biggest thing is this deck. This deck is 1,500 square feet that they added on. And then and by the way, 1,100 square foot under there is pervious. Like the water seeps down. I see it and I have photos of it. And then the whole driveway is pavers. So we were under the assumption, the previous owner had mentioned like, oh yeah, this was done because it helps with lot coverage. You guys don't account for pavers or decks being semi-pervious. It's either not all or nothing. I didn't know that either. But the whole driveway is about 2,200 square foot. So that and the deck and just the footprint of the house is what's really killing us on the lot coverage. So I could take out another 200 or so of the front walkway over here to help out with that. If that's what it takes to get this done, I'll do it.
Do you have any questions for the applicant? Can you point out on the site plan where the primary septic field is and your secondary septic field?
Yep. So they come right through here. So this is the whole field, this big area over here. So it comes out right here. And then the septics are right here. It's very, very small on this. See if I can,
And your reserve septic field?
I can't get it to move. It's all right in here. So there's two that come right here and here. And they're showing the two lines right there coming out. When we pulled this from the county, it was like it was written on like a napkin that they had a photocopy of.
Can you tell us a little bit about the swimming pool as well and kind of the process that you went through on that?
Yeah, so the process has been very, very long process. We started out, we wanted to do the whole 9 yards of putting pavers all around the pool and putting all these steps and all these other things. And then when we found out about the lot coverage, we were like, well, that's gone. Let's just try and get the actual pool itself and just put grass around it. So that's, we went back and forth on trying to figure out what would be the best shape and things like that. So we ended up with a free form and a little spa. And then just mainly just what we could afford, to be completely honest. Other than that, the main process has just been adding on things around it, like flow wells and the overflows and stuff like that. But then just taking out all of the impervious, like we wanted to put a fire pit and stuff up top. We took that out, took out about 15, it was like a little bit over 1,000 square foot of pavers that go around it, around the coping and stuff. And just said, you know what? We've got the big deck. We'll come down. We can put chairs up on the deck. That'll allow people to get sun and still see the pool and stuff as well.
So you've worked to minimize the impact
yeah.
and get as close back to that 20% as possible.
Yeah, it's we started out with a massive plan back here because we were like, well, it's just the backyard. We have all this side yard, and then we found out that 20% was where we were at.
And you talk to your neighbors and everything. What were their responses?
Neighbors are happy for it. They want to come over and use the pool. They've signed off on it, and they're more than happy to support it. The biggest thing for them is that they'll be happy that we're going to put a nice fence around it if approved, and they'd be happy with that because currently there's nothing. And then we actually went and talked to our neighbor to the back, who's technically not in the neighborhood. He's happy about it because we'll be planting like some more trees and things to help with the privacy between the homes.
Can you point that out on the site plan, please?
Yeah. So, like the trees? Is that what you're saying?
Is it trees that you want to see, or you want to see the,
Like shrubs and stuff, but we don't have them on this in particular, but
is this what you wanted to see?
Well, just the location on the site plan of where the trees were proposed in the screening.
yeah. So right on here, so right at the back of the line, so there's an area where this fence is going to go, and we would just put some small shrubs. When I said trees, I meant like smaller shrubs in the area, just to help with privacy and just the overall appeal. And that way you just can't see straight through a fence.
And can you point out on the site plan the approximate location of where the adjacent property owners are that are in support of your request?
Yep. She actually had something for it, but they are down on this right here next to me. This is my neighbor at I think it's 350, and then 355 on the other side. But she did have one that showed exactly where they were. Right there.
All three neighbors are in.
So, yep. So this one here, my neighbor Joel, neighbor Colin, and then my neighbor Penn Hodge to the back, who this one's technically not in our neighborhood, but I got him to sign off on it as well. And then the HOA in my neighborhood also signed off as well.
Appreciate it. Any additional questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I'm just maybe it's just me, I'm having a little trouble seeing where that encroachment is into the rear setback on this deck. I see the
Yes,
line, it's just,
It's going right through it.
it's going through it, but it's sort of on an angle that 50.
Yeah, like it's,
Right, so it's not an entire, right. So you don't, I mean, the entire deck is not encroaching. It's sort of like
Correct.
a little more than one corner of the deck.
Yeah, it's like that little corner that juts out.
So the worst case would be that 116 feet on the one end, the far end.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the other point that they're talking about, this 1 foot,
Where's that?
is, you see right where I'm going over right here? There's this little corner of the brick, right where the deck meets the brick right here. This corner comes out it's not even a full foot too far. It's like right at a foot, like 11 inches or something like that. And I promise I didn't move the house. So
Have you considered, I don't know what your deck looks like and what it's made out of, but is there any way that that larger portion of the deck that's sticking back 16 feet could be angled or modified or anything? Or is that I mean, what kind of job would that be if you had to do something like
it
that?
would be extremely expensive. Probably, we had talked somewhat about like what the cost might be, and we're probably talking 40 to 50,000 because you have to modify what's under it as well. So we have all of our underdecking in that area. So all that's got to rip out. And then there's some foot walls that would have to be pulled back to allow for the support structure. And then it just like, instead of having the square, it'd be kind of rounded. So you'd have to kind of rip out all the banisters and everything else out.
Okay, I got you. Thanks.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. If you'd like to have a seat, I'll call you up in a little bit for final remarks.
Okay.
Do we have any,
No other speakers.
no other speakers? Okay. Sir, if you'd like to come back up and make any closing remarks.
I just, again, thank you guys for your time and consideration. It is something that we have really been looking forward to doing. It's kind of why we moved to Milton. And once we got here, we just realized how great the city was. So I appreciate everything that you guys are doing. And again, the consideration on my request.
Good. Where did you have a?
You have a question?
No.
Okay. My question is for the city. I'm just, help me out with the 50-foot build line and then the pool and anything else outside of that 50 foot. Is that, how does that apply or does it not?
So pool is allowed to be up to 10 feet from the property line.
Okay,
So it is okay to encroach that rear
For-
setback, yeah.
10 feet there.
And to be honest, the deck or a porch, open porch or deck could have been, is allowed to encroach up to 10 feet in the rear, but this was 16 feet encroachment, so we had to get them a variance.
Okay, okay.
And can you clarify, you may have mentioned it earlier, the surface of the pool deck, is that pervious?
The surface, there will be no pool deck. It will be grass around
Grass
it.
all the way around the
Yeah.
edge? Okay.
That's what we had to compromise on, was taking all that out. There'll just be the coping that lines the pool.
Any questions for staff at all? I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will close the public portion of this application and open the floor for a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve V22-13. I believe the applicant has worked hard to meet the spirit of the ordinance.
We're going to motion in a second.
I'm making my motion.
Okay.
You want me to explain, we wanted to explain the conditions in the motion or just make the motion first? I'm sorry.
Make the motion first.
Okay, let me withdraw what I said and restate my motion. So I make a motion to approve V22-13 in accordance with the site plan received by the city on August 15, 2022. Drawn up, I think it was still drawn up by Solar Land Surveying Company. And approved with the condition as stated by staff, which is, do I have to repeat it? The condition that the staff put in there concerning the water flow, per the site plan Okay, water quality treatment to be provided by all new impervious surfaces as determined by the city engineer through the permitting process.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. First condition on the motion is the site plan dated August 15th, and the second motion, or second condition is the water quality treatment. Is there any discussion on that?
Don, if you want to go ahead and if you're.
Yeah, I would just say I'm supporting the approval because of the effort put into work to meet the requirements as best possible. There's some hardship in not being able to do it additionally. The neighbors are okay. Nobody seems to be harmed by this. There's no safety issues. It meets the spirit of the ordinance, and I believe that's why it should be approved.
The only comments I have, the added flow wells make a difference. So we appreciate that. The other thing is considering, what you could use the path, what type of pervious material you could do with the path, whether or not you want to grass it over or just find some other way to make the path, is up to you under the circumstances. What I would like to see is if you're going to do some sort of screening along the fence line or something like that, I would suggest to, add as a condition of the motion, something that would in fact be a screening type, evergreen of some sort that's at a minimum size of 6 feet. If that was, something you would want to consider, Don, as part of your motion. I think that would be helpful in, shrubs and bushes are fine, but I think, obviously if it's being used for screening, if it's just aesthetics, then it could be anything, but screening wise, it needs to be something that it has a certain height level.
Which area would that be you're talking about? 'Cause,
Along the rear fence line,
yeah,
where.
he doesn't show those.
Correct. He doesn't show anything on that particular map, but my suggestion would be adding a condition that they do put some sort of screening and it be a certain height level.
Do we,
Part of the challenge on that is it narrows up.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's got to be everywhere. I'm saying that he's going to put something in there that my suggestion would be it would be at a certain where it is, it'd be a certain height level and maybe a potential evergreen, so it looks nice and gives some screening. It doesn't have to be a full screening of any kind. I mean, just to be a certain height.
I'm torn about changing my motion.
It's my
because-
suggestion. It's my
Just saying-
suggestion. I mean,
That's okay. I'm just saying the
you know,
reason I'm thinking.
that's why we're having the discussion. That's what I'm thinking. That if it's going to be some shrubs or bushes or something like that, it should be a certain height level. So, I mean, it could be any type of, pencil type juniper even. It doesn't have to be a giant thing. It just, whatever might work to provide that screening at a certain level. I mean, you're not going to go put in a 3-foot bush to screen
Right.
the rear.
What I was going to say is I'm not sure of the necessity for the screening there because we don't have any objection from the neighbors at all to what he plans to do. I know he did mention putting some additional bushes in there. I don't know that we have an issue with the neighbors, that we should require that, but I mean, you can vote the motion down and we can redo it.
And I'm with Don on that. The applicant has demonstrated that he's worked on the site plan, he's worked with the staff. He's addressed concerns that we had brought up in his plans. And so I think kind of adding that additional requirement for additional landscaping seems probably unnecessary, I guess.
I would tend to agree. I don't see where the house, if we had people here that were opposing this. I also wanted to point out my appreciation for your efforts to, work with the city to, reduce the surfaces. And also the hardship for me, I'm not sure I would have known to ask where, a home that I was looking at was breaching into that setback. That's really, really, really inside baseball right there. So I can find my way to that hardship there, and I don't think we're offending any of our ordinances. So that's where I'm coming out on this.
Is there any further discussion at all? Let me restate the motion and we'll put it up for a vote. V 22-13, 360 Gunnison Hall Circle. The motion was made by Don Kurt and the second was by Laura Bentley with the following conditions. Let me find those. Per the site plan from Solar Land Surveying received by the city on August 15th, 2022. The second condition is the water quality treatment to be provided for all new impervious surfaces as determined by the city development engineer through the permitting process. All those in favor of approving the motion as stated, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you and continue to work with the city. The next item on our agenda is V 22-15 Owens Farm Road. Will staff please present?
V 2215 580 Owens Road, Owens Farm Road. The requested variances are to allow existing greenhouse to encroach 50-foot rear setback by 39 feet and to allow the existing greenhouse to encroach 25-foot side setback by 21 feet. The Board of Zoning Appeal deferred this application at the July 19th BZA meeting, which was requested by the applicant at that meeting. The property is 1.45 acre parcel located on Owens Farm Road in Six Hills subdivision. The property is zoned AG1 and is located in Crabapple Farm-Based Code. The applicable setback for the lot are 60-foot front, 50-foot rear, and 25-foot side. As per the Six Hills final plat shown in Exhibit B. So I'm going to go and reduce this one. Okay, this is the plat. It's showing some setbacks. The maximum lot coverage variance requested for AG1 zone property that fronts a public street is not required at this time. It was determined that this property is located in the Crabapple Farm-Based Code. Therefore, the applicant withdrew this variance as shown in Exhibit H. There is a letter in the Exhibit H. Staff received a complaint about this greenhouse being built too close to the property line from a neighbor. The City of Milton Code Enforcement Officer confirmed the location of the greenhouse and cited the homeowner for building the greenhouse without a permit on April 5th, 2022. The staff recommended that the greenhouse to be removed to meet the setback requirements. However, the homeowner maintained that the location of the greenhouse is most suitable and requested a variance to allow the greenhouse to remain as shown on the site plan in Exhibit C. Currently, there is a primary house, a pool, a basketball court, and a greenhouse on the property. As shown on the site plan, this is the site plan, and this is the greenhouse here. As shown on the site plan, the greenhouse is encroaching into 50-foot rear setback by 39 feet and encroaching the 25-foot side setback by 21 feet. Photos of the greenhouse are detailed in Exhibit D. The applicant is proposing a 6-foot-high green giant to be installed between the greenhouse and the property line, separating 580 and 570 Owens Farm Road for additional screening, which is detailed in Exhibit E. There are 4 neighbors adjacent to the subject property, of which 3 of them are directly impacted. We have received some comments from these neighbors. 570 Owens Farm Road is directly impacted and it opposes, this is the subject property, and 570 Owens Road is not in support of this variance. 1360 and 13160 Birmingham Highway and 13196 Birmingham Highway also directly impacted by this variance. However, they are in support. And 590 Owens Farm Road, which is not directly impacted by this variance or this greenhouse, is also in support. We actually have received multiple letters, so total 3 letters in support, but we have received actually, as of today, more than 7 letters of opposition for this variance. On July 12th, 2022, DRB met and had following comments. DRB recommends approval of the variance as requested based on the information that was presented at that time. Recommended conditions by staff. If approved, staff recommends the following conditions for site plan from registered land surveyors, INC, received on June 13th, 2022 by Community Development Department, with no expansion permitted to the footprint of the greenhouse. And you have in your packet all the letters that we have received so far. Any question?
Shuba, just to confirm, so when this went before the Design Review Board, we had no letters of opposition at that time, is that correct?
Yes, we had not received anything at that time. And the notifications were out by that time, but I guess they were waiting for Board of Zoning Appeals meeting to voice their opinions.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Shuba, are you aware of any specific definition of a greenhouse in the code, or is it considered just a structure like any other structure? I looked myself, I didn't see anything that said a greenhouse is in the code anywhere. Is it just, is it treated like any other structure?
Yes, it is treated as any other structure.
Okay, thanks.
As an accessory structure?
Accessory structure,
Yeah,
yes,
accessory
yes.
structure, yes, sorry.
And it would, the building setbacks would apply for building the accessory structure.
Shuba, do you mind putting up the site plan again for us?
You also let me know, accessory structures, if I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm confusing it with guest houses, but is that one of which, or both, not supposed to be in a side yard or rear yard? What's the deal with that again?
Yeah, well, this is pretty much in the rear
Right.
yard, and the guest house and accessory structure, both are allowed in the rear yard. So
Okay.
that was not the issue. It's just an
Right.
encroachment into the setback.
Quick question, just can we go back and just discuss the reason for the deferral, just for anyone that's
Right.
here for the first time?
So last month, we had advertised, but we received some information that the sign on site, the green sign, was not present. I mean, some people could not see them, and so it was removed. That was a complaint that we received. So we thought that to comply with all the public notification requirements, it's better practice to defer this variance. That was the only reason we deferred it.
Thank you.
Shubha, can you also put on the screen the pictures of the greenhouse that were included as well?
Yes.
And kind of just walk us through each of those photos?
So this is a greenhouse, which you are seeing from the property owner's lot, and this is from the neighbor's property, and this one. And I don't.
And what is the closest point that the greenhouse is to the property line?
Closest point,
Yes.
I think it's literally 4 feet. Because if you see over here, I'm sorry.
4.5
It's-
feet.
Yeah, it's really very close.
And Shubha, just to verify that, because we deferred, because the sign wasn't displayed, but we know that it is up and was displayed the whole time?
Yes.
Okay,
We
thank
heard
you.
that it was up all the time.
Can you go back to the pictures and show the additional pictures that were there? I believe there were some evening photos as well.
Actually, there were some, you know what, I'll put this.
It's on page 17 of our packet.
One is at night shot, and it's showing the light exposure.
And is that on all, do we know, is that on all evening throughout the entire night? Do we know that, or is that's probably for the applicant?
What's that?
Whether the lights are on all night or not, that's probably a question for the
I-
applicant.
Well, that's a question for the
Yeah.
applicant, yeah, you know.
And Shubha, can you put the picture up on page 10 with the four-board fence and then the proximity to the greenhouse? I'm just trying to get a feel for that small alleyway. And then can you slide it over? I want to see a full-grown green giant or verbita. It's on the other page now, 11. I'm just trying to see what that looks like. So the base of that, and then the area in which that would need to go. So thank you. That's what I wanted to see.
Any additional questions for staff?
Nope.
It looks like we have 6 people to speak, 3 in the opposition and 3 in the
3 in support? Okay.
support. I mean, actually, 2 of them have not clearly said that they are support or opposition, so I'm just counting them in the support.
Shubha, you said there were 6 in opposition and 3 in favor?
No, 3 in opposition, actually.
6 total, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Does the applicant want to come forward? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Rob Cunningham, 580 Owens Farm Road, Milton. In brief, I'd like to maybe just summarize the timeline of what's happened and what's occurred. I appreciate you guys asking all the questions.
Do you mind pulling the microphone up a little
Sure.
closer just so everybody
Sure.
can hear you? Thank you.
After gifting this greenhouse to my wife, I found out that I had, made some oversights on variances. We put it there for multiple extenuating circumstances. Doesn't make it right. Wanted to try to do everything possible to hide it, make it disappear, make it become completely out of sight and non-existent to our neighbor when I found out that, there was an issue. We made multiple cordial outreaches to our neighbor. We received before the last hearing, we had received 2 written approvals from neighbors, and then we had gotten a verbal approval at a face-to-face meeting at their residence. I left, went out of town with my family on 16th birthday, came back. We had that 1-day hearing. I think on the same day that we were here, instead of a verbal approval, if you'll shield it to our satisfaction and make it disappear, the day that I showed up here, a lawyer letter showed up in my mailbox that I had not seen. It wasn't in the file. The board architectural review committee had conditionally approved if I was able to make the greenhouse disappear. Then it came to our attention that there was a complaint, and then there were multiple complaints. So there's one neighbor impacted, and then there's multiple neighbors that, for whatever reason, have decided to, want to join the fight, but they're not actually able to see, and they would not be impacted by the greenhouse in any way. I still don't understand why it was approved and verbally accepted, and then all of a sudden it decided to go the 180 degrees opposite, and that's, neither here nor there. But, my wife and I have earnestly racked our brain to try to find a way to make this thing disappear so no one can see it. It can cause no harm, no undue stress. We agreed to leave the light off. We agreed to make it disappear. The only way you would see it is to trespass or hover in a helicopter over our backyard. There would be no other way to see it. Because of the level terrain and not wanting to take down trees and having access to power and water, we decided that would be as far away, tucked away, and as discreet a location that would not bother us or them. We could hide it. The pictures that you did see were wintertime pictures, I believe, maybe in February or March. The trees that we did put up, obviously not adequate, had not bloomed, were not full, were not bright, and some of those photographs do seem a little stretched, if you will, to make the size and the obnoxiousness of the light look a little bit more than the reality when it's on. Since we've been notified that there's been a problem, the light has maybe been on once or twice in 4 or 5 months, and not all night. We leave it off out of a courtesy, but it's not been on. So, our first HOA initiated conversation for an amicable resolution was a lawyer letter in our mailbox. No courtesy call, no discussion. How can we work this out? What are our options? The second HOA communication was the president showed up here in support of the complainant, just rattling off chapter and verse and code violation, and just absolute loaded for bear, no civil discussion, no contact, no phone call, no what can we do, no community, just let's fight. So, I feel blessed to share some information that I've been able to do as a research based on this situation. We've been amicable. We offered to open up our checkbook to spare no expense to make this thing go away so that no one would see it. It would cause no harm. And we have the neighbors, all but one, around us that are immediately impacted in agreement with this. So now we're into a technical fight. What I've been able to find, I believe, is going to be exceptionally beneficial to everyone in this room, and I didn't know it until I was forced to start digging, studying, learning, and reaching out to our constitutional lawyer as well. So my first question I would ask, based on why we're here tonight, is if I could just get, for the record, because for my own understanding, some clarification, may I ask what jurisdiction you are claiming to rule over my property?
We don't take questions.
You don't take questions? Okay, then I'll answer the question. You have no jurisdiction. Okay. I have in my possession an allodial title, which is a land grant from the United States government, giving me basically perfect title and perfect ownership of my property. If no one else in this room has title, then they have no standing and they have no jurisdiction over my property, including the homeowners association. What I've learned through my studies that I believe have stand the test of time, I think will benefit everyone in the room. If you don't mind, I'll pull that out and share it with you. A patent for land is the highest evidence of title and is conclusive as evidence even against the government and all others claiming under junior patents or titles to include warranty deeds. There's case laws, United States versus Stone. Estoppel is hereby noticed and has been maintained as against municipal corporation, a county. The right of land ownership is a God-given right, not a government-given right. Government only has the administrative duty to transfer paperwork to convey land to the private sector. And again, this is constitutional law.
Mr. Cunningham,
Okay,
there's 10
thank you. I'll be done in 3. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that municipalities cannot exert any acts of ownership or control over property that is not owned by them. A land grant patent, which I possess, is the conclusive evidence of the right, title, and interest in a particular tract of land granted to a private party by and from the United States government. It is unlawful to ignore lawful rights vested to individuals who own a land patent or a grant. All public officials take an oath to support and defend the Constitution. Public authorities and attorneys can be sanctioned for attempting to eviscerate the land patent in violation of their oath. That's found in Supreme Court case Monterey versus Del Monte. The plaintiff was awarded $8 million for code enforcement, illegal trespass, and restriction on his business, and another $1.45 million for aggregation of forced sale. Without law standing or jurisdiction in over 200 plus years of Supreme Court case law, unless we believe we can overturn case law to have jurisdiction over our backyard, I would like to cordially request that I'm able to be released from, get a variance, do what I said I was going to do, cordially work with our homeowners association. If they are unwilling to negotiate and they want to try to go all the way to the Supreme Court, I'm willing to do that with them. But what I have found gleefully is that the constitutional law, settled case law for 80 plus years is on my side. I have jurisdiction and I have unalienable right with my allodial title to use my land. It comes with a bundle of rights that cannot be infringed upon. To take it to, if they might have any willingness to engage me in a cordial conversation and find a way to make this problem go away so that the one neighbor could be satisfied, we're willing to continue to entertain that discussion. And, again, I'm grateful for your time. I didn't intend to learn all that I've learned in the last 75 hours, but of studies and all my console. But I have copies of my land patent. I brought the title all the way back from the time it was originally initiated in the late 1800s to me and my wife. So this is a perfect and pure title. And I want to just thank you all for your time.
Got a question for you. In the past 30 days, you had mentioned that you'd wanted to talk to the homeowners association and work things out. You had said that you hadn't had any conversation with them. Was there any conversation initiated on your part with the homeowners association?
No, sir. As a result of the legal, I assume that they are in receipt of a letter and a rebuttal to the law firm that they hired. For cause, the homeowners association has threatened a lien, to trespass, to destroy property, to cause a daily fine and restrict the use of my property based on what they believe they have jurisdiction over. So the legal letter, the threats in the legal letter, and the presence of the homeowners association president at last meeting has been extremely hostile. Our neighbors have gone radio silent. They haven't spoken to me. They haven't outreached. Again, I can't, as I spoke last month, I said, unless you can climb a 20-foot ladder, get in a helicopter, or trespass on our yard, you would never see this greenhouse. I would make it disappear. They want to have me tear down a $40,000 greenhouse on a technical violation. It doesn't seem reasonable. It doesn't seem neighborly to someone that's lived next door to each other for 18 years and never had an issue.
So I guess my question to you was, have you reached out to the adjacent property owners? Not necessarily because you're the applicant. Have you reached out to them in the past 30 days?
I've gotten another letter of approval last month from all the other adjacent property owners, except for the one complainant, who have then recruited others in the back part of the neighborhood and others who can't see it and could never see it unless they trespass in our back. There's only one person that can see this that has a complaint. Everyone else are supporters.
Question. Mr. Cunningham,
Yes, ma'am.
when did you purchase the house in
And
Six
we
Hills?
closed in July of 2004.
Okay. And so the homeowners association was in effect then?
I do not know for a fact. I know the city of Milton wasn't, but it may have been. I believe they're acting in good faith, assuming that there are signatures on an HOA. So I do know the builder Will Stoltz for quite a while basically was the home. He was it. He was the authority. He was kind of the sheriff, and there was not an acting homeowners association for a period of time. I just don't know the exact date it actually became an incorporated entity and became an association.
So have you paid homeowners association
have.
dues?
I
Okay,
have.
so you are aware of that organization and
I am.
the rules and covenants that go along with it.
And what I was not aware of is that they had junior title and they actually had no rights, that they had a legal document, but not a lawful document. And that was the beauty of what I've learned and the research that I've got. There's a very big difference between a legal administrative document and a lawful constitutional right, of which this is impenetrable. Nothing can supersede this. Nothing can violate this. This is a forever granted land patent with my name on it, with a title come all the way through. So, as the Constitution of the United States gives us all these rights, my bundle of rights includes to use my land as I see fit, as long as it's not a commercial enterprise, and it's not a commercial enterprise.
Question.
So,
Yeah,
you have another question?
yeah, I do, but I'll wait for staff questions.
You want me to go? Putting aside the legalities of land ownership and that thing for a second, I'm going to follow up on your sort of offer to do what's necessary to hide this. Could you explain a little bit about the materials of this greenhouse and why it may be difficult to relocate that? What is I don't understand what the structure is, how difficult it would be, and have you looked at, looks like on your land, you have a lot of other locations that it could possibly go. So what is the material? What would make it so hard to pick it up, and why can't I move to another location?
Well, there's a concrete base and it is secured to the concrete base, and there's electricity and there's water attached to it. So it is cemented and secured, and it's got the structures on the inside for raised beds and lowered beds. There's water, electricity, and, you know, there's a small air circulation unit in it. So basically we'd have to dismantle the entire thing from the base, you know, tear that down, build a new base, rewire for water and everything else. And, you know, from a standpoint of level land, without having to tear down trees, without having to disturb the dirt, and to be able to hide it and put it as far away from our house and what I had hoped to be our neighbors. We did initially put some screening trees up, but again, it was December when this went in, so they were not adequate. We immediately said, we'll do whatever it takes to your total satisfaction. Our landscape architect came out. The large green trees can go, it starts at one point is 4.9 feet, I believe. But then at the back end of the greenhouse is about 6 feet or 6.5 feet. It is very easily to 100% cover and hide and screen this greenhouse so that no one would be able to see it, especially the party that's.
In the interest of time, if I could just ask you to focus on
Sure.
my question.
Sure.
Have you at all, you said you'd consider trying to do things. Have you looked at moving, or I should put it this way, are you willing to possibly move this? Or are you saying no, all you're willing to do is put trees in?
Well, you know, at this point, I'm willing to entertain solutions and options. Our homeowners association has basically left it with under no circumstances will we approve. Even if you guys approve it, we're coming after you.
And that was part of what I was going to say. I mean,
We have nothing to do with that.
yeah, it doesn't really
It
matter.
it doesn't matter
It
what my
doesn't matter
answer
what
is.
the
'cause-
HOA does. It doesn't matter what they say.
Okay.
They have no bearing on what we do, and we have no bearing on what they do.
Okay.
You know, we're here to make a decision on these 4 criteria that are listed in the code. And the Milton City Code, you know, your house is in Milton. It's a Milton City Code. That's what decision we're making is your variance based on the code. You know, is there a variant? Is there a reason if one of these 4 or all of these 4 reasons, are they met or not met under the circumstances so that we can either grant or deny your request for variance because currently you're not within the code. Okay. So I understand Don's question because it was my question as well. It looks like there could have been another place to put this that would have been further away from anyone's property. It may have gone into the rear setback. You know, there could have been a lot of different options under the circumstances. I understand you said you had power and water. It looks like from my perspective, it would have had to been run back there. So could it have been run somewhere else? I don't know the cost difference there.
It was already there. It was pre-existing. It didn't have to be run specifically for it. There were speakers out there. There's an in-ground sprinkler system, the water, the power, everything was there. The land was level. And to do a 50-foot offset, now that I've looked at this, since that's become the thing, the 50-foot offset all the way along the backyard of our line would almost put the greenhouse dead middle of our backyard.
Yeah.
It's not an attractive place to put it. It's not a place that it can be, that can be hidden. But guess what? They would not be able to see anything whatsoever. You know, and again, what we're talking about here is codes and statutes, and we're talking about legal administrative codes and statutes of Milton and lawful constitutional patent land rights that I possess. And so what I'm suggesting and hoping is that you could cordially approve this because, again, I do have full legal standing with 200 years of Supreme Court case law that says I'm standing on constitutional terra firma. Okay. If you want to rule against me, then, well, I guess we'll just have to go through the appeal process. I understand that. And I understand that's perfectly your right. But I will take this all the way to the Supreme Court. That's where I stand. So.
there any additional questions for the applicant?
No.
Yeah. Thank you. If you'd like, you can have a seat. I will call you up in a little bit for closing remarks. Is there anybody here to speak in
Support?
support?
Yep. There is one letter that Robin's going to read.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'm going to add, if it's okay, to add a little bit
Yeah.
of time because he took the 10 minutes. So
Sure. I'll make a
Definitely.
Well,
motion.
actually, he took only 5 minutes because then they started questioning.
no, it was 10 minutes.
Okay.
Sorry.
So
yeah. I did it
how
twice.
many
Okay.
speakers are speaking in support?
We have a written comment, and then 2 speakers said that one of them didn't say they want to speak. I don't know. Let me see. Brent, Brett.
Did you wanna
Do
speak?
you want to speak? Oh,
Okay.
So we only have 1 speaker in support right now.
Okay.
And it'll take me 20 seconds to read this.
I'll make a motion to add additional 5 minutes for those wishing to speak in favor, as well as what will be a total of 15 minutes, the original 10 minutes plus the additional 5 minutes for those wishing to speak in opposition to this application.
Second.
So we got a motion from Hodge and a second from Laura Bentley to extend 5 additional minutes for those wishing to speak in favor, as well as those wishing to speak in opposition. Is there any discussion?
Okay.
Well, we have to finish it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, this person is in support. Lori Altman at 7900 Innsbrook Drive, 30350. She says, I'm in support of any neighbors who would like to build a greenhouse. It would end up helping the community at some point. Also, there are so many more important issues than not allowing this. Even if the distance to the adjacent property isn't exactly as to code, especially if the family is willing to make concessions. That's it.
Another one
I've got a
is-
question for you on that. The zip code that you gave was 30350,
50.
so that,
Sandy Springs.
It's outside
Sandy's,
of the
okay, it's
city.
outside of the city. Okay, thank you.
And the other one is Lucy Fraser. Your address is also Roswell?
She can just say it up there.
All right, you can-
Good evening. Can you please state your name and address for the record, please?
Good evening. I'm Lucia Frazier, 485 Hardscrabble Road. First of all, I would just like to ask anyone who I support this, and anyone in this room who supports this, could you raise your hand?
It's all
Go
right.
ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, so there's a lot of people who support this. So I think if you're counting number of supports versus opposition, I think there's a lot more support right now. If you're just counting who's impacted, you still, it's still the support wins because two are good with it and 1 isn't. So if you just want to count votes. So I just want to mention that it seems like an unnecessary hardship to the owner if you don't allow this to go through. I've been there and I never even knew it was there. I couldn't see it. I didn't even know it was there for a while. So it's not easy to see. Greenhouses are amazing structures. They're beautiful. They grow food for families, which is super important right now. This greenhouse is really beautiful once you can find it. There is no good reason to push undue hardship on the owner. Building it without the right setbacks, as you heard, was an accident. I have a greenhouse. It's pretty large. It's like 36 feet long. And one day it's going to save my family's life and probably my friends and good neighbors. I also recommend that you edit the setbacks. They should be like 15 feet from side and back. Because a greenhouse is like having a garden. You can have a garden anywhere on your property. And you need to have the garden at the right spot where it's optimal for the plants to grow. So a greenhouse should be the same way. It's for growing food. It's really important to have it in the right place. So it's undue hardship on everyone, these setbacks that you have. I know what normally happens when we create this code, because I'm well aware of how it's created. A lot of people don't realize what they're doing when they create it. So when you say 50 feet, on a lot, and it puts it, sometimes it'll put it on top of your house. I've looked at code like that even for livestock. It makes it physically impossible to house livestock, even though it allows it for certain acres, but then you can't put a house. It's really interesting. So I know some of this gets created in error because somebody didn't notice. So this should be looked at, and it should be changed, and it should be encouraged for everyone to have greenhouse, garden, chickens, all kinds of livestock. It's a beautiful thing to have a farm, and we need it everywhere. It would be beautiful. The last thing is that growing your own food is actually really healthy. So it benefits everyone. If you don't have a greenhouse and your neighbor does and they're growing food and you get some, you're the luckiest person on the planet. Trust me. And it is so much better for the environment if we're growing our own food. The supply chain, the gas to bring the groceries to the store, I don't do any of that. None of it. And I make zero trash. You know how much trash I throw away every week? Half a bag, this little, not even every week. This is all I get to throw away. Everything goes to compost. Everything is harvested right out of the backyard. It's beautiful. I make no waste, almost no waste. So it's very green and environmentally friendly. So if you can at least take from this a lesson and open up maybe a project or something to change the code, that would be awesome for the whole community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Say we have more.
Are you going to close the hearing? I have a question.
No, we're good.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
I'll open it up for those that want to speak in opposition. And we have 15 minutes in total.
Yeah, 15.
Yes,
Yeah,
15.
yeah.
Gregory Power.
Good evening. Greg Power, 13175 Owens Way. I represent the Architectural Review Committee of the neighborhood and the HOA. I believe you guys know our position as the letters were included in the packet, but just some of the highlights. I actually live in the neighborhood, and I appreciate the raising the hand stunt, but that would look a lot different if you asked how many people actually live in the neighborhood or are a resident of the city of Milton. We live in a covenant controlled community. We are governed by a master declaration and we have bylaws. These are set forth to protect property values. The homeowner knows about the HOA. He is aware of the Architectural Review Committee. He even pays dues to the HOA. The greenhouse is an ongoing covenant violation. The greenhouse was built without a permit, without HOA approval, without ARC approval. And I might add, there's no such thing as verbal approval with the ARC, and there was never a submission made. It does not adhere to Ordinance 64416. Zoning ordinances are there for a reason, and it does not adhere to the bylaws. The neighborhood talks about being neighborly, but at his own admission, he just admitted that the greenhouse was unsightly, so he put it at the neighbor's property line. And at the last meeting, he said that it was a simple oversight, but we at the HOA and the ARC have gotten no communication. The letter actually states, let's have a conversation. The letter states, please resubmit, please adhere to the setbacks, and please meet the builder guidelines. The ARC has never once denied anything that met the guidelines and met the ordinances. It's that simple. Yes, the HOA is against this. Encroaching 21 feet into a 25-foot setback is egregious. Encroaching 39 feet into a 50-foot setback is egregious. A proposed fix of planting a 60-foot tall green giant that grows 20 feet wide into a 4-foot space is laughable.
Point of
Excuse me, can you
order.
please,
Okay, point of order, Mr. Fricky. Can we have a statement about outbursts from the chamber?
yes. Please refrain from speaking unless you're at the podium.
Yes, on July 12th, the HOA did ask the homeowner to adhere to the bylaws and that they had 30 days to remove the greenhouse and that it was in violation of Article 6, Section 3. We begged that they would, in the letter, that they would resubmit, like I said, and be consistent with our guidelines. Last month at the BZA meeting, the homeowner said it was simply an oversight. It was just his mistake that he didn't come in front of the ARC and the HOA. But yet, there's been no contact. On July 25th, the neighborhood did send another letter reminding them to remove the greenhouse or we would have to invoke our right of Article 7, Section 1 and 2 of a fine starting August 12th. We have 42 written homeowners of a 70-home neighborhood that have written the BZA that oppose this. 2 letters of actual residents that live in the neighborhood support it, and 42 people. That's pretty impressive. The HOA kindly asked you to deny the variance request. It's against the HOA bylaws. The fix is unacceptable. The homeowner misrepresented to the DRB that he had the impacted neighbor's approval. The only impacted and adjacent neighbor is against this. There's considerable light pollution, both from during the day, not just when the lights are on, but when it's reflective during the day. The code enforcement cited the homeowner. The planning department recommended approval. And this is an unacceptable precedent for Six Hills residents. It's punitive to our property values, and simply hiding or paying your way out of a violation doesn't make it right. Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm going to have to ask you to leave if you continue to make noise during the hearing.
Next is Terry Barber.
Good evening. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Terry Barber, and it's 570 Owens Farm Road in Six Hills. First of all, just on a deeply personal level, it's probably one of the more uncomfortable experiences that we've had. And I'm really saddened that my neighbor has put us in a position where we have to be adversarial. I'm really sad. It's just so unnecessary. And there's an awful lot that would and could be overcome with a conversation, and I agree with that. And in terms of so-called pre-approval of a plan, Debbie and I really did seriously consider the plan that Cunningham's brought forward. We wanted it to work. However, when we got through speaking with multiple counsel, including our realtor and others, it became very, very obvious that for us to yield meant that we were signing into a variance that affected both us as well as the rest of the neighborhood and setting a precedent. And with the possibility of being exposed and very vulnerable to the compromise of our own home value by way of agreeing to such an egregious type of, of variance is just something that we never really could understand why we'd be being asked to even support this. The honest truth is, for any of you who are all for greenhouses, I'm for greenhouses. We love them. And if you think you don't see it, I want to invite you to come to my backyard. Come in my living room, because the greenhouse lives in our house through every single window in the back of our house is visible to that greenhouse. And I don't care that it is supposed to be beautiful. It's ugly. It looks like a plastic barracks. And it is not something that anyone would want in their backyard to be able to see. The homeowner doesn't even want to have to see it. So it is not something that is going to bring value to our property, much less to the value of anybody else that's within this neighborhood. So I think we've said everything that probably needs to be said in terms of what you've been able to hear tonight. And the truth is that we're sick about this, and we just want to ask that the BZA deny this variance. Let's get on with the rest of what all that life has to offer, and let's put this behind us. And I have with me those 37 petitions signed by our neighbors that we did not solicit, that they came forth and volunteered to grant support and sympathy for the situation that we were in.
Does staff have a copy of those?
Yeah, we have all the letters that you got, or the petition. Yeah, we have.
Okay. Thank you. Just a point of clarification. Your property, I know you stated your address, but you're immediately to the left of the applicant's property, and the greenhouse is 4.6 feet from your property line, shared property line? Is that-
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. Just a question on the lighting.
Yeah.
Is the lighting, has that stopped?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
One more.
Yep, we have,
opposition.
are you done?
Yeah, I think.
Mr. Barber is done? Yeah. Okay. Joanne Wanderley.
Lost it too, so. Yeah, where's she going? Tonight.
No, up, yeah.
Good evening. Can you please state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Joan Wonderly, 765 Owens Lake Road, Milton, 30004, and it's located in Six Hills subdivision. I'm in opposition of this variance, and the applicant has egregiously violated the Milton Ordinance 64-416 on many levels. There was no permit request applied for from the city of Milton, no Six Hills ARC homeowner approval from the Six Hills Board. In fact, the Six Hills HOA Board has denied Mr. Cunningham, after the fact, his request and demanded the greenhouse be removed. Mr. Cunningham proceeded with what he wanted to do and now wants forgiveness in place of ordinance approval for this variance request. Mr. Cunningham's claim that he didn't know he needed approval falls short. He stated that the design review board, that he put the greenhouse in the location he did was because of the water, the electric, and the fact that he didn't have to look at it and could not see it from his house. Now, the Barbers have another story that they could see it. The protective ordinances in Milton are for everyone. This greenhouse is an intrusion to the Barber's home, property values, their peace, and in violation of the protective ordinances of Milton Ordinance 64-416. Mr. Cunningham created his own hardship. You cannot come to you and ask for forgiveness when you've created the hardship because you went ahead and did something that you probably knew you weren't supposed to do or you didn't have approval. I would like to ask how many people here that are in support of the greenhouse actually live in Six Hills and actually live in the city of Milton? How many live in Six Hills that support the greenhouse? Okay, and how many live in the city of Milton? Okay, well then if you live in the city of Milton, you know we have ordinance and we have ordinances for a reason, and that's to protect everyone. If we didn't have subdivision covenants, people would be putting porta potties in the front yard. We need to live by structure and have things for approval. And so I respectfully ask the BZA board to deny this request for a variance. Thank you.
Thank you. I will invite the applicant to come forward and make any closing remarks that he has.
I don't know if he has enough time,
Oh.
unless you grant more time.
If I recall, I saw the time got down.
Oh, we're
pretty
down,
short.
okay.
Again, you have the option.
Okay.
Oh, we did.
We extended it 15 minutes.
Was it 10?
Yeah,
That's 5 minutes. It was extra 5 minutes, right?
But they've used it. Okay.
We have to, if we give him more, we have to
Yes.
give, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
That's fine,
Okay.
if he wants more time.
I'll make a motion to extend an additional 2 minutes for those wishing to speak in favor, as well as those wishing to speak in opposition, 2 minutes per side.
Yeah, and I might suggest if you add the 2 minutes to the, if it's approved, add the 2 minutes for the opposition beforehand. The applicant is supposed to get the closing
Closing,
statement.
certainly, okay.
Second,
We get a motion to add 2 minutes to allow those wishing to speak in opposition first, and an additional 2 minutes for those wishing to speak in favor as a closing statement. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Sir, if you'd like to have a seat for a minute, what I will do is invite anyone that wishes to speak in opposition an additional 2 minutes.
We had all the speakers
Okay.
come up, so.
Sir, sorry about that. If you want to come back up, you can make your closing remarks. You'll have 2 minutes.
Sir, thank you. I believe in the spirit of collaboration, if we were able to have a civil discussion, some of these half-truths and half-inferences, such as just resubmit within guidelines, which means tear it down. That's not a negotiation. That's not a cordial request. Please resubmit to the ARC within guidelines, which means tear it down. Secondly, the photographs are wintertime photographs. And thirdly, I'm not putting 60-foot tall trees that are 20 feet wide. Obviously, that wouldn't fit. I offered in written format 100% veto power and satisfaction to, if we were not able to adequately screen this 100%, we would move it or tear it down. That's in writing. That was submitted to them. That was if for any reason, even if you go to sell your home and someone might not like it, I will tear it down if that's a contingent on purchasing your home. That was left out of the discussion. So the fact that unless our homeowners association is a landscape architect who knows everything about screening of properties, I'm here to tell you, I have a plan. I have an architect that's been in the community for 40 years that can make this thing hide from view and they will never be able to see it. Okay, so their offer to come in and negotiate means tear it down and then we'll talk to you. And the other side of the coin is it's impossible to make this thing not be unsightly, which again, I would say is not an accurate statement. And if it is at that point, I offered, if for any reason it's not 100% invisible and you can't see it, then I'll make other arrangements to tear it down or move it. Okay? So there's half truths being spoken about the conversations, the offers that were made, both in writing and in text and in email, to bend over backwards to satisfy our neighbor.
2 minutes
'cause
is over.
I had no intent to do harm.
Thank you, sir.
So,
Are there any additional questions for staff? Any additional questions? I'll close the public portion of this meeting and open the floor for a motion and a second on this application.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to deny the request for variance V22-15. Both requests for the 50-foot rear setback by 39 feet and the 25-foot side yard setback by 21 feet.
So
Second.
Commissioner Bentley, if you could go ahead and go through the 4 considerations,
Oh,
how you feel
absolutely.
like that.
Yep. I thought we were going to have a discussion
We
after the
didn't do it,
motion.
We're gonna discuss it first.
So she's gonna restate everything.
Okay, that's fine. It was a
So
motion.
let me restate the motion. We have a motion from Laura Bentley and a second from Adam Danella to deny the 50-foot rear setback to modify that to 39 feet, as well as to allow the existing greenhouse to encroach on the 25-foot yard setback by 21 feet. I'll open it up for discussion. We've got a first and a second.
Yeah, for discussion purposes, I appreciate everyone coming back to be here this evening and going through. We have standards for consideration, which is relief if granted would not offend the intent of the ordinance, which is what we're here to analyze. And the intent of the ordinance is to put setbacks in place so that structures aren't on property lines, because they can't, in this case, it can't be buffered by vegetation. The 4.5 feet off the property line doesn't even allow enough room for any kind of buffering. In my opinion, this is a self-imposed hardship. There are other places on the property that this structure could have been placed. While it was more convenient to put it where he did, the backyard is out of the buffers, and we could have seen it go there. Obviously, it does impact the neighbor in which it is most immediately in this line of sight. I guess that is the barbers. So relief would be to the detriment of that neighbor. And finally, I think their property values with this variance would definitely impact the welfare of that most impacted neighbor. So for me, the standards of consideration, I really can't find one of our standards that I can even remotely find that this passes.
And one thing that I'll add, and you may have stated this earlier, is that we have to meet all 4. It's not 1, 2, 3, or 4, but it's all 4. And Laura, you said it very eloquently. I'm really struggling to find even just one of those conditions that we need to consider here. There's detriment to the adjacent property owner. There was support, but the support was from the property owner on the other side, which was the very least impacted by the location of it.
Yeah. And I think we also have to consider, we are a body that looks at, our charter is to approve or deny variances, implementing and enforcing what the structure could be used as in the future. The lights could go back on. We don't know that. It's going to be winter again. in my opinion, it's almost impossible to buffer this because there's no room. I don't think anything can grow back there. It's shaded, and it's unfortunate because, when you pull water and electrical and you make this effort, something has to stop you to say, wow, I'm investing a lot. I need to check and do my due diligence to be sure that I'm within the ordinances of my city and the HOA, which we're not here to stand as judge for, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are ways that he could spend money to make it disappear. But at the same time, I just, this piece of property has plenty of other places to where it could fit. I don't see a hardship on the lot itself in any way. And again, it goes back to, where this is located, is having power and water an extraordinary or exceptional situation or condition? I don't necessarily think so. The other issue is, again, what is the intent of the ordinance? And again, as you said, it relates to protecting property and the property adjacent and, the neighbors and the city. And that's the intent of the ordinance. And, I don't feel that having this here has met that. I don't think relief would not offend that intent under the circumstances. I agree.
No comments.
Any additional discussion? So we've got a motion from Laura on V22-15 to deny the variance request for the greenhouse encroaching the 50-foot rear setback by 39 feet, and also to deny the request to allow the existing greenhouse to encroach on the 25-foot side yard setback by 21 feet. All those in favor of denying V22-15, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is V22-17130 Von Lake Drive. Will staff please present? Shuba, would you hold on for 1 second while we allow those that are leaving? Thanks.
V2217, 130 Vaughan Lake Drive. Requested variances are to encroach into 75-foot impervious setback for proposed pool and pool deck. This is going to be withdrawn because they no longer need this, and you guys will vote on it with acceptance of withdrawal. And to allow the lot coverage for AG1 zone property that fronts a public street to increase from allowed maximum of 20% to 22.95%. The site is a 1.01 acre parcel located in Vaughan Lake Estate subdivision as shown in Exhibit B. The property is zoned AG1 and is located in rural Milton Overlay District. The house was built in 2021. The applicable setback for the lot are 60-foot front, 50-foot rear, and 25-foot side. The applicant has withdrawn the 70 setback variance as detailed in updated letter of appeal. The applicant is requesting a variance to allow the lot coverage of AG1 zone property that fronts a public street to increase from 20% to 22.95%. The as-built survey completed for the property revealed the existing lot coverage is 20.05%. That's over 20% allowed. Pool and pool decking is proposed to be located in rear yard where there is a steep drop in the grade, with the property having an overall 28.28-foot drop in the grade. There is also a lake bordering the rear property line that also requires undisturbed buffer. Total of 25-foot state buffer, 25-foot city buffer, and 25-foot impervious setback. A total of 75-foot buffer. 50-foot buffer and 25-foot setback. The applicant met with the city staff on June 28, 2022 to discuss variance request for proposed pool and pool decking shown in Exhibit C. After meeting, the applicant submitted a revised plan to staff on July 5th, 2022. The total encroachment into the 50-foot impervious setback was reduced from 900 square feet to 42 square feet, a total reduction of 858 square feet. Overall, proposed lot coverage was reduced from 24.8% to 23.79%. The July 5th, 2022 plan can be referenced in Exhibit D. Here's Exhibit D. The applicant presented this plan to Design Review Board on August 2nd, 2022, and DRB recommended to eliminate the 75-foot impervious setback encroachment and reduce, if not eliminate, the lot coverage variance altogether. The applicant submitted a revised plan on August 4, 2022, eliminating the encroachment requirement, and it reduced the lot coverage from 23.7 to 22.95%, and it's shown in Exhibit E. Overall, from the original staff meeting with the applicant on June 28th, the proposed lot coverage variance has been reduced from 24.88 to 22.95. And the variance for encroaching in 75-foot impervious setback has been eliminated altogether. The applicant is proposing 3 dry wells for water quality treatment as detailed in stormwater plan, which is on Exhibit F. Applicant, the adjacent neighbor support map, which is over here. This is before yesterday, actually. We had received letters of opposition from white columns, and they are showing in the map here, the 3. However, I received a letter today, and they had withdrawn their opposition. It's in your packet. It's the last page of the packet. On August 2, 2022, DRB met and had following comments. Applicant shall work with the staff to eliminate 75-foot impervious setback encroachment and reduce the lot coverage. Staff recommendations. Staff comment. Development engineer Jerry Oberholzer, which is here today, if you have any questions for him. He states that the stormwater runoff from Lot 7, that's 171 Lake Drive, flows directly into the existing lake. There is no stormwater runoff from this property that flows to any of the lots adjacent to subdivision as shown in the water quality plan from land disturbance permit for this subdivision. So the recommended conditions by staff are, if approved, the staff recommends Per site plan from Crescent View Engineering LLC received on August 4, 2022 by Community Development Department. And the water quality treatment to be provided for all new impervious surface as determined by the city development engineer through the permitting process. That's all. Any questions?
I have a question for Jerry.
Yeah,
So can you help, where does the runoff for this property go?
It flows into the Vaughn Lake.
On Lake, which is right
Here.
there. Retention pond.
Okay, sorry. They usually don't let me talk at these meetings, so. It comes down, it flows into the lake. The lake is the stormwater management facility. It provides water quality and detention for the subdivision. So, and there is also a water quality berm that was in the original, constructed along the base of it to treat the water as it goes in there.
You might not know this, but where are we with the build out of this neighborhood? How many-
We have actually 2 lots left. Well, the ones we're working with right now are the 2 rear lots over here. This one, we were out there today looking at this. They're landscaping that house. They're installing some flow wells into those 2 properties, which we did not require that they're doing to work with the adjacent neighbors. The other lot here is under construction. It's basically a foundation. They're bringing in some soils, but they have completely provided, they've mulched the whole site, including their storage pits. So they've been very proactive on erosion control on that one.
And, okay, proactive on, okay, so I guess my question is this retention pond, how many of the homes flow to it? And how do you feel about the capacity of it? I know it depends. If we're having a 100-year flood, you can't predict that, but I'm just trying to get it overall.
Basically all the stormwater that falls onto the street and other ones, basically everything to the south flows into the lake. These 3 lots here all flow directly. All the street work does. And some of the area from these lots actually coming in the street and are treated by that. The rest of it goes back and is treated. There's a creek behind it over here that these houses basically discharge into. I think the first lot hasn't been built out. I think that's a trailer. So basically there's plenty of capacity in the lake. It's actually the best way to, we really, when it comes from water quality, it's great to have a retention pond, a lake, because it provides you the kind of treatment you want on that. And you can see it's been modified to provide the additional storage for this development.
Okay, so in your opinion, if everyone had a pool and abided by the lot coverage, it could,
Yes.
it could handle it.
One thing I do want to point out to this, it is a great BMP when we've talked to the homeowners where we can get the water from the pool and runoff to go into a flow well, which is additional capacity that is up and beyond that. So not only do we get storage in that, we also get some runoff reduction and treatment of that water when it goes into these. Basically, it's a French drain flow well type thing that's sized based on the area.
And so from the French drain, it goes.
It's supposed to actually, it percolates, it infiltrates into the ground.
Okay.
Most of these have a pop off. So if we get a large, like if we were getting a tropical storm,
Okay.
it overwhelms it, it goes in there. But when you have those kind of storms, we just don't, it's.
So I'm learning a lot. This is interesting to me. So some filters into the ground and then the runoff goes into the lake.
Yes.
And you feel comfortable with it? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Does that lake have an outflow
Yes.
to a stream? I mean,
Yes, there's state waters, a stream that flows this way.
Okay.
So you can see all the water. This is the top of the basin. It's an existing lake that was modified when the subdivision was built.
Right.
And then it flows out.
So hence the state buffer requirement.
That's correct.
Plus Milton, yeah.
Our ordinance requires buffers on all state waters, lakes, streams. The only thing we don't put a buffer on is a detention pond, because a detention pond is supposed to be dry.
Okay, thank you.
Jerry, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. A adjacent property owner that's not in the subdivision sent us a video of water flowing.
Yeah.
Have you seen that video?
I've been out there. I've seen it repeatedly. I've been out there. We've met with the homeowners to discuss that. Our director, Bob Brushimi, has spoken with Loudermilk, who's the builder up there. They're hiring a third-party engineer to study the issues, any damages that have been done to the adjacent properties. As we understand it, the builder has paid those damages. They got their pools silted in. So they've been proactive, and we've been really going out there on a weekly basis. The developer has been very proactive with us. So,
Can you point out on that Exhibit G exactly where that is? That the water's, the specific lot that you believe it's flowing from? I know it could be multiple potentially. It's hard to say.
You want the lot, the subject property?
no.
Well, does that detention pond run to the same stream as
Oh,
the
okay.
other
We may
properties
need
to the north of it
see.
drain into that you were talking about?
Yeah, they're on the same basin. Actually, the adjacent lots in, yeah, don't show that. That one, that one's, go back to the original.
Here, maybe you can see some.
Yeah, actually, this is the lot in question. These were the three. These are the two lots that are under development right now. Like I said, this one is very close to being occupied. They're landscaping that one. This one has a foundation. These are the three property owners. And as you can see, the water from these two lots flow naturally across the property into this creek, which is a state water too. So these homeowners that were built probably before the ordinances went into effect, state laws, so they have a state water, and that all flows, eventually ties into the water that flows from the lake into the whole drainage basin.
And do you have any information? My understanding is they're doing a hydrology study. The builder's doing a hydrology study?
Well,
on his
there
lot?
is a hydrology study for the whole development,
Mhm.
but from what we understand from the buildings representatives, they're actually going to do a hydrology study on the lots themselves. Basically, it's to show, it's to protect them from a future, if there's any kind of discussion with them.
And with them being,
I won't say anything derogatory about attorneys because the city attorney's right here. But
and kind of elaborating on that a little more, since those adjacent lots are still under development, if there's anything that comes up in those individual hydrology studies or reports on those individual lots, the city could address that from a
yes.
permit process.
Yeah, both these houses are under permits right now. So we're monitoring them because of the problems with the neighbors and stuff. The concerns, we are out there. Craig Henson, who's the city inspector, he's out there. I'm out there. We were out there today. So we're being very proactive on watching everything out there. And we're hoping for a very dry fall.
I'm sure the owners downstream are too.
Yes.
Any additional?
Yeah, I have a question for the city, actually. Shiva, what's this one's, when was this development started or these homes built?
So if I remember,
I mean, it looks
think
like
was-
this plat's 2016.
Yeah.
But that's a primary, right?
Yes, that's primary. So I think the final was 2017 or 18, and the buildings were, I think, 2020, 2019. They started.
I think it's had different builders and it was very slow, but the final plat is at the point where they should start building a house. So I believe it was 2016 on that plat. So it's just been a very slow development until Mr. Loudermilk or the Loudermilk building had bought most of the lots. So
Yeah.
it's been a process.
And so what about this? I mean, this is a fairly new build or new development, right? And it's over the limit as built.
What?
And we're talking about a fairly new development. So I'm trying to understand, this one's hitting, this is put right in the middle. This house is built right on the lines, right on the 1 acre. I mean, they're trying to stretch every single thing in there and then they go over.
And you're talking about the 20% lot coverage.
The
right?
lot
20,
coverage on
yeah.
top of that. Yeah, I mean, because they're hitting the build lines almost on all four sides.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of issues, but they're going, you know, what is it, 0.55%, whatever it is, 0.05
It was
over.
literally 0.05.
Yeah, 0.05
Stop.
over. So they built the house and driveway and the impervious parts of it
Mhm.
specifically to meet all the criteria. It seems like they knew what the city wanted, and the builder built every single thing exactly to the max limits.
Yes.
Yeah, I think.
And this is just recent, right?
Yes, the house is built it recently. I think it's 2021. In the staff report, it says 2021. So
Yeah, I think what happens sometimes is, you know, they have a plan that's been submitted. They do the calculations. We check the calculations to make sure it's right.
20%.
But when you get out in the field, we don't have the manpower to go and check every single, you know, is it 20%? Also we don't have a requirement to provide what's called an as-built, basically a survey
Sure.
to check everything. And so if there's that small percentage that's off, that's not uncommon. I was looking at some plans in Kingsley that was done. The house was built about 6 years ago. And I looked at the plans and then I looked at pictures of the house and it was a totally different house.
Mhm. Sure.
I mean, so
And I'm not saying that anything about the city not paying attention to it. The more so I'm looking at it from the builder perspective of they're maximizing every single thing they could do under the statutes
right.
at this point in time. And that's what they did here.
they did.
Okay.
Any additional questions for staff?
No.
Shiva, how many people do we have speaking in favor and opposition?
We just have owner and a contractor to speak on this, and they both are in support.
Okay. And no one in opposition?
No, the opposition people didn't wanted to come to the meeting, so that's why they sent me the email and which is included in
Okay.
our packet.
I'd like to call the applicant forward to present their application. Please state your name and address for the record as well.
I'm Vance Dover. I'm the owner of Georgia Classic Pool, and my address. or
Yes,
the
please.
address- Yeah, my address is 1301 Iron Mountain Road, Canton. Typically, Ashley is here speaking on behalf of our company, but she's out of the country on vacation. So, but I don't think I can really add anything else that was already presented. I think just more or less the fact that I think we had a lot of teamwork, and we built a lot of pools in Milton, of course. And I think the fact that we just had a lot of teamwork and the fact that we were able to withdraw one of the variances. And I know Ashley worked really close with staff on trying to withdraw that variance and then also just trying to reduce the lot coverage. But I think we're kind of about the most that we could have done. But I know you probably saw we went back and forth on multiple things and kind of settled where we're at now. So.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
So, yes, very much appreciate the withdrawal on the encroachment into the impervious setback. So what could 2.95, getting it down to compliant, what does that look like for the pool?
Well, that's impossible because the house is at 20.05.
Okay, so it's
There's no
not
way
even,
to do
there's,
it.
Yeah. So the
There's-
fact that we are putting a pool in and only really utilizing that small amount, I felt like showed a lot of work on our end because originally it was encroaching much more into the setback. I don't know the percents, but much more into the setback. So we've eliminated that per the city's desire for us to do that. And then the footprint just got smaller as well.
What is the proposed pervious decking? What does that mean?
The proposed well, I think that was our way of just trying to show some mitigation.
Yeah, what is it? Like
What material?
What is it? Yeah,
Pervious,
material.
like a pervious paver.
Okay.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, what is it?
Okay, a pervious paver is a way, it's actually a certain paver that's installed where water can drain in between. You got a lot more drainage underneath the paver, and it's like it has a stone base. So water literally does penetrate through the pavers into the stone and into the ground. So that was another way of us just trying to help mitigate the fact that we're over. So,
And is that I mean, that decking, is that part of the 22, whatever?
Yeah, yeah,
Is that considered
It
impervious
definitely
by the
counts
city?
because technically Milton doesn't, other places do give credit. Milton doesn't give credit, even though they probably should, because it truly does penetrate into the ground. Because it's, again, you got a paver and they all have spaces in between, and you got several inches of stone. So it truly does penetrate into the ground.
So that decking
Yeah.
is in your number.
It is in the number.
Is
That's
it?
right. Yeah. And if there was credit given, it would even be closer to 20. But no, it is in that 22 number.
See the reserve septic.
It's up here.
Oh, there we go, right in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, that whole, it's a septic reserve, all at the top, in front of the property.
Any additional questions for the applicant?
Yeah, actually, where are the flow wells? Am I not seeing them on here? If I'm looking at this one,
Separate stormwater.
there's a separate one.
Let me see if it had here or not.
How many are there?
I think we have 3.
How much
Yeah,
is
they, one who gave me the last. No, Nick,
Yeah, we proposed 3 flow wells.
Proposed 3.
yeah, it's showing over here. If you see the exhibit E, there is a.
Where? E? No. Here.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay.
The box over here.
Yeah, just not marked on this one. Okay.
Okay, do we, these? Nothing?
Is there, no.
Okay,
That's
so
not us.
maybe not for you, but for the applicant, are the houses occupied on each side?
Yeah, I think
I-
I'm technically the applicant.
Oh,
Am
I'm
I-
sorry.
am
I thought,
The homeowner.
homeowner, sorry.
Why don't you?
Please say your name and address for the record. Thank you.
My name is Darrell Gogler. I live at 130 Vine Lake Drive in Milton. I'm the homeowner. If you pull up the adjacent housing, I'll tell you who's living where. I can walk you through the whole development. I was the first person inside the cul-de-sac.
When did you move in?
We closed
So you were
Halloween a
here.
year ago.
So
Yep.
tell them which one is.
Yep.
You're the first owner?
I'm sorry.
First owner?
Yes, sir.
Brand new,
Yeah,
everything?
brand new.
whole
We
area?
moved in first week of November. The check mark is now a permanent person who's in. They have signed a letter of approval. The property to the left of that and the one adjacent to that are both under construct. Actually, the next 3 are under construction. And the one at the very top has a permanent resident in it. Now, inside the HOA are also the 2 pieces of property on Freemanville Road that you'll see at the you can see one of them at the very top.
Can you point on the site plan?
Yep. Right here and right here, they are part of the HOA, but not inside the cul-de-sac. They also we just have letters that they've signed this weekend to add to the list of people who've agreed to approve.
When you were, I assume, here for earlier, did your HOA have any issues with approving a pool?
No, well, the people with the check mark actually are putting a pool right now. The HOA, we're not sure it exists yet.
It probably doesn't. It's probably
controlled by the
still
declarant?
It was
builder.
supposedly owned by Loudermilk, who just sold it to Octave, who was the original landowner. So I've reached out to them, and they say it's with the lawyers trying to be incorporated. So I don't really have a whole lot of information from a HOA standpoint.
Okay.
I'd love to tell you I did, but
Yeah,
I don't.
nah, it's probably still with the builder.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's 2 pools being put in, one at the green check mark and the other one right here.
One thing that I want to also clarify for you, even if we provide approval, you may have heard it in the earlier meetings, if your homeowner association has different rules or regulations, it'll have to comply with their rules and
Absolutely.
regulations too.
No doubt.
Any other questions?
Yes, so I'm just, it just looks to me like this is really a tight squeeze for a pool or.
It
yeah.
is. We had to move it to get out of the impervious zone. We had to move it to within 9 feet of the back of the house.
Yeah.
Is, I assume this. Okay.
I think so.
Is this that 2-story deck
Yes,
you've
sir.
got there, this square?
That's correct.
Okay.
Bottom's a cement slab holding up the upstairs.
So.
So you're
is this
going to
the-
build retaining walls into the hill and the pool into the hill?
Correct.
So this fence stays?
It's going to,
The fence that's shown on the back of the.
Yeah, the
pool?
fence stays.
So,
Actually, it was built
over
for the
on this
pool.
side
The
here.
builder knew we wanted to put a pool in. Kind of wish I would have investigated this a little further to know that my house was already above the 20%, but shame on me. Because he wanted me to use his pool company to build the pool. But found out the hard way that that's why we're here.
and did you have a real estate agent?
We
Or-
did.
You did?
Actually, two. They had one, and obviously we had one.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You have a question, maybe it's more for George Classic Pools, but you said you're not getting credit for the pervious decking. Now, I always thought that Milton gives you credit in this calculation when you have pervious paving. You said you have not been given credit for that. Is that accurate?
We don't give credit for pervious pavers. We encourage them, but we don't have a system of giving them credit for that.
Is that absolutely accurate? Because I know every case is different, but we certainly have considered that in the past when we've told people they needed to put pervious pavers in to reach certain conditions.
We've applied for a lot of permits in the city, of course. So, I know in the past that we have offered it up just from a mitigation, kind of like today, but we've never really received credit. I agree with you. I think we should.
Well, so I guess it's not our place here to argue that particular fact. So if the staff says you don't get credit for it,
We don't get credit. Yeah.
Maybe it's just my recollection that's off, but
Yeah.
So
okay, thank you.
with those impervious pavers, like how many are there? What does that get you to? I just am trying to understand how much of an impact they have. We don't give credit
If I had
for.
to just guess off the top of my head, the pool deck would be larger than the pool. So
Right.
it would probably get us, to 21, I guess, or something, depending on the credit. So,
All right, that's helpful.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that was our point is like, we don't officially get credit on paper, but in reality, in the field, they definitely do. They work.
Who, I'm sorry again, but when you say they, who actually does these calculations that you deal with for the calculations for these?
The contractor
Yeah.
provides us the calculations. We just check them.
So, and the reason I'm a little bit questionable, because we use different, services and engineering and survey. So I don't know on this particular one who we used, but yeah, it's calculated through us.
Okay. I'm not sure if our stormwater expert is standing because he has a comment, but I don't know if that's appropriate at this point. Is that appropriate at this point or?
I can just tell you from a standpoint of pervious pavements and stuff, in the short term, you have to look at the design to see if it's going to work, how much stormwater is going to capture. And over time, unless you maintain them with a vac truck and stuff, they lose their ability. You're going to get runoff. So what we've done in the long term is required the drains and the infiltration basins or treatment or something like that in as a better solution over time. I mean, we think it's great you're going to do that, but we just don't give you water quality credits on it. I mean, we support putting in that if you want to, but when Shuba or Robin come to me, I always say, show me what the design section is, and then how is it going to be constructed? So it's more of a stormwater, water quality credit we don't give. Just like gravel, parking lots that's still considered impervious because when you drive over, you compact it and the water runs off. So
Is there anything additional that you would say could be conditioned on this application to?
no, the solution we came up with, anytime anybody's willing to put these infiltration basins and take that deck water into it, we're very favorable to that because we believe that's the way to treat the water and also tends to reduce the runoff too. So when somebody comes forward to it, we look at that as a great solution, long-term solution.
Thank you. Let's see. Sorry, if you wanted to come back up and.
No, I didn't pay attention because there wasn't really just the one.
Do we have any additional questions for the applicant at all?
I don't.
No.
I think it was mostly Q.
Is there anyone here to speak in
No.
opposition? Okay. So if you'd like to make any closing remarks,
I think
you're
we
welcome to
pretty
do
much
that.
said it all.
Okay.
I think the challenge was if I would have done a little more homework, we would have found out we were already above 20%. But I didn't, when my builder told me he was going to build a pool for me. So, but shame on me. It's the best I can say.
And you've continued to work with the staff in terms of just
Absolutely.
refining the plans and trying to get as close.
Yep.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep.
If I can have a seat.
Sure.
I will close the public portion of this application and open, excuse me, did you guys have, sorry, let me reopen. Were there any additional questions for staff?
Nope, I'm good.
No.
No? Okay.
You're good.
Closing the public portion. I'll open the floor for a motion and a second on V 22-17.
I'd like to make a motion to approve variance 22-17 to allow the lot coverage for an AG1 zone property that fronts a public street to increase from a maximum allowed of 20% to 22.95%.
I'll second that. Yeah, oh, are you still going? I thought that was the,
Nope, I was done.
oh, okay, I'll second that.
The only comments I have is I don't necessarily find there's a hardship here because this is a buildable lot. It's a brand new lot. The builder built it. They maxed out everything. It's just not a lot that's supposed to fit a pool. I mean, if it were, there would have been some allotment for the builder to do that. I don't know how the builder could have built you a pool under the circumstances, even if he offered to, without just being non-conforming altogether. So that's the problem I have with builders and then selling to homeowners that don't understand or don't know. The builders know. And it's just these lots, the way the home is built, it's not made for anything else but a home. It's square into the build lot. It hits all the lines. You know, it's a large house. It's got, you know, the septic covers all, you know, the front area. You've got your driveway, you've got your house, and that's it. And it's maxed out. It's unfortunate that that's the situation, but the way I feel about it, that is the way I feel about it. So, you know, that's contradictory to the point of the motion and the second, but, you know, I don't understand, you know, how a hardship can be found when, you know, the lot is platted, it's built upon, there was no hardships there, a home was built and it was done and it was done. And that's it. You know, you want a pool, I can appreciate that. But I don't necessarily find that wanting a pool and not fitting into the 20% is a hardship.
Laura, one thing that I'd like to suggest is kind of a friendly amendment to your motion that we reference the site plan as well as the water quality treatment.
Right.
Would be the only two things that I would.
Well, I would just want to make a comment to Adam. I couldn't agree more. I'm, you know, struggling with this as well because this is a newer neighborhood. And so my, you know, my concern is more with the developer And we had gone down the path of, having notes on different parcels, when they're sold, that, this parcel is not going to be able to accommodate a pool. So here I'm undoing my motion. But I guess my reasoning is, and it's a stretch, but I'm going back to the pavers and the dry wells and, this willingness to accommodate. We're almost there, and I haven't been at this very long. This is only my third meeting, but I know that there might be other.
And I can absolutely appreciate every single thing they've
I know.
done to try to
Yeah.
minimize
Yep.
the impact.
And that's, but I understand the
My concern
hardship.
too,
Yeah.
are we going to have 6, 7 other properties coming in here
Yeah.
looking for the same thing? I don't know the answer to that.
And it adds
but
up. It does. add
I
up.
don't know.
Yeah.
And,
My comment would be, well, first of all, they don't totally understand if the lot coverage is only related to water runoff. But in regard to that, they're mitigating the fact that they're not meeting the percentage by putting in the flow wells, and they're going to get rid of that runoff water that is caused by being greater than the lot allows. Now, I'm not certain whether that lot coverage only deals with stormwater, but in this case, I think that's what we're referring to, and they're going to mitigate that. So I see what you're saying, but.
Yeah, I mean, they've done a great job getting to where they are. There's no doubt about it. It's just a very different situation because it's a brand new lot that a developer just developed with the point of not adding anything to it. I mean, that was what it was developed for. And it is developed. And does that make it a hardship that you can't fit a pool? I don't know.
One of my other concerns is we saw the video of the adjacent properties being flooded. And one of our 4 requirements is to make sure that we are not jeopardizing or putting in a negative situation adjacent property owner by something we approve. And we've already seen it firsthand before the pool's even been built, what could potentially happen.
But my understanding is, from the way it was presented, that those people withdrew their objection, the ones that were getting water into their backyards. And additionally, I don't know that water was coming, where it's explained, was coming from this lot. It was coming from those other 2 lots they showed, not this one. With those people withdrawing their objection, the ones getting in the water in the backyard, I have to assume that, those videos are kind of moot as far as this variance is concerned.
But
To
this
an
goes back
extent,
to what we were discussing earlier. It was that if everybody puts a pool in back there, you got a multiplying factor of the overall impact.
The other issue is there was one we had before. It was a situation where a neighborhood was built and there was a dry bed that turned into a stream. And when they had it resurveyed, there became a stream buffer into that lot. And I'm not saying that could, I don't know what's going to happen on those other properties. I don't know how the stream, how it runs, how much stormwater goes to it or runs to it that is going to be adjusted, fixed, changed. It may not change at all. It may never change. It could go up 4 feet. I have no idea. I mean, my issue, it really just comes down to the lot itself and what the developer builder did.
Well, this lot is different than the other lots. And we're not going to set a precedent by approving this one for the other people in the neighborhood, because those are different lots with different circumstances. Their runoff is different. I think we heard their runoff goes into another state stream and another neighborhood. This one goes down into that other lake. So
I think it connects into
eventually
the same stream.
eventually those streams connect, is my understanding, but that's downstream. That's my understanding. So we wouldn't be first of all, we're not setting a precedent for anybody else in the neighborhood if we were to give a variance here. The other ones would have to be looked at in their own consideration. So I don't, and we have no objection from those people that were getting the water in their lot. So, but notwithstanding
and in regard to those objections, I think they withdrew their objections, anticipating sitting down with the city and working something out with the developer. which is why I get what, and those objections don't have any bearing on me because I think they're mad because of some other lot being built in the neighborhood that's putting silt into their property, not these people. And I have, I never had a concern with their objections from the onset. So I totally understand your point there.
Okay, well, we're just putting our comments out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're all good. I have to say, one of the things that made me feel more comfortable about being over by 2.95, Jerry has confirmed that he feels comfortable. It's not a hardship. I feel like it could be this, I don't know, with the stormwater and the pond that it goes into, but I'm struggling to, I just go back to the percentage and how close we are and I would assume that we've approved others lot coverage variances that are close, but just.
Any other
Any other
further
comments?
discussion?
Yeah.
I just think he bought the house with the idea that a pool could be put in, right?
Let's talk into the mic a little bit.
When the homeowner bought the house, he was the idea that the pool could be put in. It's not his fault that the information was wrong. And I think that might create a hardship for him because he had that in mind when he bought it, and I guess the information was wrong. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Go back to the motion.
Okay, do you want me to amend?
We've got a motion in a second, so we got to vote on that, right?
Do you want to just?
It was a friendly amendment.
Do you want to do?
There's a motion in a second. It can be, the options are to vote on it, to withdraw and restate, or to propose an amendment, which would.
I'd like to just withdraw and restate.
And Don, do you agree?
What do I say?
Well,
Yes, I agree.
I agree to the withdrawal, and you can restate.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve variance V 2217 to allow the lot coverage for an AG1 zone property that fronts a public street to increase from a maximum allowed of 20% to 22.95 with the staff recommended conditions, which are per the site plan from Crescent View Engineering LLC received August 4th, 2022 by Community Development, and the water quality treatment to be provided for all new impervious surfaces as determined by City Development Engineer through the permitting process.
I'll second that motion. So we've got a motion to approve V 22-17 to allow the lot coverage for an AG1 zone property that fronts public street to increase from a maximum allowed 20% to 22.95% with the following two conditions. If approved, per the site plan from Crescent View Engineering received August 4th, 2022 by the Community Development Department. And the second condition is the water quality treatment is to be provided for all new impervious structures as determined by the City Development Engineer through the permitting process. Is there any further discussion at all? All those in favor of approving V 22-17 say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The motion passes 4-1. my minute or agenda. Okay, the next item on our agenda is consideration for appeals and secondary variances.
None.
Old business,
No.
new business.
I gave, I got new emails for you and Zach, and I just gave you your credentials. You just have to log in Outlook with those credentials, the password and a username.
Okay.
Username is your email,
Okay,
obviously.
thank you.
Nothing else.
If I might, step in, I know we ran out of time to do the training. I didn't know if you wanted to make a specific plan for that or wait until sometime in the future. just so that
Shiva,
I
how many
know.
cases do we have on next
Next month, we have 2.
2?
Yeah.
How much time, Paul, do you think it would take if we, let's say we did 30 minutes, do you think that's plenty of time?
Typically, I've gotten through that presentation in an hour before, so it really just depends on the amount of questions.
I would suggest let's tackle it after the 2 cases so that we won't have a time ticking again, and we can address all the questions. And Zach would be there and he probably have
We'll have
seen
some
the
questions, yeah.
some of the presentation as well.
What's your guys' take? Do you want to do it next month? Do we
fine.
want to wait another month and then do it, or
That's fine.
next month?
I still, I think I've said this one other time, I have no problem with doing it after the next meeting, but I think we should set a time limit. I mean, we shouldn't go on for 3 hours. I mean, I would think we should say we want to do it for 30 minutes after the next meeting, something like that.
Yeah.
I just, we tend to ask a lot of questions. I do it myself. We all ask questions. We might go on forever, after the next meeting. I just think we should put a time and say we're going to do it for an hour. I don't care what it is, but
Okay.
My thought was we did an hour today, so the reason I threw out 30 minutes was like, okay, this will give them enough time to finish this presentation
Definitely expect
at the
it to
next
be
meeting
done.
versus committing to an hour.
do we have to agree to this new business, or
Yes.
do we have to vote on the new business or no?
No.
No.
Oh, okay.
I'll
Let's
just bring
move-
it back as old business.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
So
what are your
this
thoughts?
isn't-
Do you want to do
That's
30 minutes?
good.
You want to do an hour?
well, Paul said we
Paul?
could bring it back as old business.
Okay.
Is
Well,
that,
I mean, if
could
you-
we
if
do
you-
that?
If you want to do it after after the regular applications, it could just be on the agenda for old business. You can,
Okay.
That would be
you
great.
can internally consider we're only planning for a certain amount of time. And I
And
will,
done.
I believe effectively, I can just focus on motions and conditions. I think those are the 2 big items that I have left, which could be very quick or.
Let's do that. I'm
That sounds
in favor of
good.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
Barry, do you want to take the last item?
Motion to dismiss to,
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Period.
We've got a motion from Barry to adjourn and a second from Laura.
I got rescued.
Is there any discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously.
What a catch.